I didn't go on the dark web to buy anything. I went because I wanted proof that it was just a place, not a presence. That's what I told myself, the way people tell themselves they're only reading about a fire, so they can learn how to avoid one. I work in IT, and that week someone was already testing the edges of my life. Credit alerts, password resets, little failures that felt less like crime and more like attention. So I installed Tor not to shop, but to understand the kind of person who treats anonymity like a weapon. The first pages were boring forums, mirrors, storefronts, pretending to be normal. The real difference was the tone. Everything was polite, transactional, as if morality was just another setting you could toggle off. That's where I saw the listing that made me laugh out loud. Mystery box from Germany. Sealed. Surprise. Ships worldwide. The price was low, the reviews were worse. It knew me. Never again. Worth it, but don't open it alone. It screamed scam, and that should have been enough. It wasn't. I paid from a fresh crypto wallet, used an address I thought was safe, and waited for nothing to happen. 3 days later, a tracking number appeared, and I hated how relieved I felt, like fear had been waiting for a delivery window. The package arrived on a Tuesday, small and light, with German stamps, and no return address. It shouldn't have made it to my door. Packages vanish in my building. This one sat dead center on my welcome mat, aligned perfectly with the edge of the door like someone had measured it. Inside was a black box, wrapped in tape, so tight it looked vacuum sealed. No note, no invoice, just the box. When I cut it open, I expected junk. Instead, there was an old smartphone scratched screen-dead battery and a sticky note that said, "Charge me." My hands were sweating. I could have thrown it away. I didn't. I plugged it in because the dark web doesn't need to force you. It only needs to make you curious enough to do the work for it. The phone booted without a passcode and opened straight to a video player with one file queued up. The thumbnail was my bedroom, not a generic bedroom. Mine, the cheap lamp, the framed print, the wrinkle in the curtain I keep meaning to fix. I told myself it was coincidence, but my stomach already knew better. I hit play. The video showed my bedroom from a low angle near the dresser, like a camera hidden beneath something. The timestamp was from last week, a night I remembered because I'd come home late and collapsed, fully dressed on the bed. In the clip I walked in, dropped my keys, rubbed my eyes, and moved, like I do when I'm alone, and sure, no one's watching. Then I paused in the doorway and looked directly toward the hidden camera. I stared at it for 3 full seconds, like I'd heard something. I didn't remember doing that. Under the video was a sound that made my teeth ache, a soft, steady clicking like a fingernail tapping plastic on purpose. The clip cut out. The screen went black. A chat window opened by itself. One message appeared, "No username. You picked the right box." I unplugged the phone. It stayed on bright and calm, as if it didn't need power. Another message. "Don't worry. This is just the intro." I tore my bedroom apart. Drawers out, vents checked, smoke detector down, flashlight under the bed, hands shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. I found nothing. And the more nothing I found, the more certain I became that there had been something there recently. Something small, something removed after it served its purpose. When I came back, there was a new message. Good search. Then a photo arrived. It was me in my bedroom, half under the bed, face washed out in my flashlight glare. The angle was wrong. Too high, too wide, like the picture had been taken from the corner near the ceiling. My bedroom doesn't have a corner like that. It has a wall. I stared at the photo until my eyes burned, trying to build a rational explanation. Drone vent, camera neighbor's lens through a crack. Anything that kept the universe from feeling haunted. Then the phone buzzed again, and the need for explanations died on contact. "The box is the smallest part," the message said. "We ship awareness." My skin went cold at the word ship, because the package had already crossed an ocean to reach me. What else could cross distance that easily? I held the power button until the screen dimmed, and as it shut down, I saw one last line appear faint, like an afterimage. Next one ships faster. That night, I didn't sleep in my bed. I sat on my couch, with every light on, watching my hallway camera feed, like I could outstare whoever had stared at me first. Around 3:12 a.m., the feed stuttered for a single dropped frame. When it resumed, a small box sat at my door that hadn't been there a second before. No knock, no footsteps, no notification, just perfectly placed cardboard. I tried to be rational and bring in a witness. I called my friend Marcus, the kind of guy who laughs at legends and fixes broken systems for a living. He arrived, saw the box, and did what I couldn't. Picked it up. His confidence lasted 2 seconds. "It's warm," he said, like that was the part that bothered him most. The box had been sitting in a cold hallway all night. Then his phone lit up on my counter. The caller ID didn't show a number. It showed his home address. Marcus went pale. The box vibrated once, a soft pulse against the wood, and from inside came the same slow clicking I'd heard in the video, like a fingernail tapping plastic on purpose. Marcus set the box down as if it had teeth. At the same moment, my hallway camera feed on the laptop flickered and zoomed in by itself, tightening on our faces as if someone behind the lens had leaned forward to watch. My drawer rattled, and the mystery phone, supposedly powered off, lit the inside of the wood with a thin glow. A new message appeared. "Thank you for inviting a witness." Marcus didn't open the box. He didn't even argue. He left so fast he forgot his jacket, and 10 minutes later, he texted me from his car. My dashcam just saved an hour of black footage with one frame. My face. "I'm out. Don't call me about this again." I carried the box to the dumpster behind my building in broad daylight, because daylight makes people brave in stupid ways. I dropped it in, slammed the lid, and stood there waiting for relief like it was a chemical reaction. My phone buzzed before I reached the stairwell. A photo, the dumpster, the box my hands letting go. Under it, one line. "Nice try." When I opened my apartment door, the box was back on my welcome mat, perfectly aligned as if it had never left. That's when I finally understood what the mystery box was really selling. Not objects, not scares. Proof. Proof that someone could reach my doorstep, watch my reaction, and make me participate simply by being curious enough to click buy. And the worst part was knowing I had paid for that lesson myself. The second time I used Tor, I told myself it wouldn't be physical. No more boxes, no more proof on my doorstep. I wanted distance, the kind that makes you feel safe, because you can close a laptop and pretend the door to that world shuts with it. But distance is a lie online, and the dark web loves liars who think they're being careful. After the mystery box returned from the dumpster like a boomerang, I swore I was done. I deleted the browser, wiped my spare wallet, changed my locks, bought a cheap camera for the hallway, and tried to sleep like a normal person. Then a message showed up in my regular email, not my Tor inbox, not some hidden forum, "Your delivery is delayed." No sender name, no order number, just a tracking link that didn't resolve to any company I recognized. I hadn't ordered anything. I hadn't even opened Tor in days. I ignored it, because ignoring is what you do when you're trying to reattach yourself to reality. The next morning, there was another email, "Delivery window updated." That afternoon, another recipient confirmed. Each one felt like a finger sliding across my spine. That night I reinstalled Tor, not because I wanted to shop, but because I needed to know whether the internet was gaslighting me. I searched the only thing that came to mind, the myth everyone knows, even if they pretend they don't, Silk Road. I expected old articles and dead links. Instead, I found a listing that looked like it was wearing a costume of history. The vendor name was nostalgic, the language playful, like a museum exhibit built by someone who hated museums. The item description was almost a dare. A delivery from the road. Not what you think. Not drugs. Not data. A reminder. Under it, one line that tightened my throat. Ships to the curious. I didn't want to click. I did anyway, because fear makes you seek patterns, and I needed to see if this was connected to me or just my brain trying to glue two unrelated horrors together. The vendor's page had a feedback thread, and buried between the jokes and the warnings was a review that made my skin go cold. He includes photos. That was enough to make me close the tab. The moment I did, my desktop background changed, just for a second. A flash. My own front door seen from the street in daylight. Then it snapped back to normal. I ran scans. I rebooted. I told myself it was a glitch. Glitches don't frame things that precisely. I set up my cameras anyway. One on the porch, one in the living room, one aimed at the hallway. Then I sat behind my blinds with the kind of patience you only get when you're afraid to leave a room. The next afternoon, a padded envelope appeared on my welcome mat between 2 frames of footage. Not delivered by a person, not tossed from a car. It was simply there. My porch camera froze at 21403 p.m. Resumed at 21404. And the envelope existed in the new frame like it had been added by editing software. I picked it up with gloves because paranoia becomes hygiene when you earn it. The envelope smelled faintly metallic like cold pennies. Inside was a folded sheet of paper and nothing else. I unfolded it and found a Polaroid photo of my front door taken from the street, perfectly centered. On the back, written in neat block letters, was tomorrow's date. No signature, no message, just a date, like an appointment. I didn't sleep. I watched my feeds all night, jumping at every building, creak every neighbor's footsteps. At 4:19 a.m., my living room camera caught me dozing in the chair, head tilted, mouth open, a person pretending they're awake. At 4:20 a.m., the footage corrupted into a mosaic for 3 seconds. When it recovered, my chair was empty. I was still there in real life, still in the chair, but the camera showed the room without me. That's when I understood the terror wasn't being watched. It was being edited. The next day at exactly noon, my phone buzzed with a notification from a package app I'd never installed. Delivered. I opened my door and found a small box on the mat wrapped in plain brown paper. The cameras did the same trick, a single lost second, the box appearing like a magic act. Inside was another Polaroid, this time my living room, from inside, from an angle high in the corner, near the ceiling, looking down at my couch and the chair where I'd tried to sleep. On the back, you record too. I checked the ceiling. No camera. I checked the smoke detector again. I checked vents, corners, light fixtures. Nothing. The absence started to feel deliberate, like someone wanted me to hunt and never find, to waste my life searching for a device that wasn't there. That evening, I made the mistake of replying in my own head the way you do when you're angry and alone. Fine. What do you want? And as if my thoughts had a microphone, my smart speaker lit up without being addressed. In a voice that sounded like a customer service rep with no empathy, it said, "You wanted a delivery from the road. This is the delivery." Then it went quiet. My laptop pinged. Not Tor. Not email. A plain text file appeared on my desktop, named Received. I didn't download it. It was just there. Inside were 3 lines. Item, reminder, quantity 1, shipping immediate, return policy, none. Under that was a string of numbers that looked like coordinates. I copied them into a map service out of Reflex and got a location, a small park less than a mile from my building. The time listed beneath was 9:30 p.m. I didn't go. I stayed home and watched my cameras like I could build a wall out of pixels. At 9:29 p.m., my hallway camera flickered and showed a man standing outside my door. Not a hoodie, not a mask, just an ordinary guy in a dark jacket, hands in his pockets, looking down the hallway like he was waiting for someone to arrive. The footage froze before I could zoom in. When it resumed, he was gone. My door handle jiggled once, slow and controlled, like a person confirming I was awake. Then nothing. A minute later, my phone buzzed with a Tor message. Even though Tor wasn't running, "You missed the meeting." Another message followed. "Don't worry, we still delivered." The next morning, every device in my apartment, laptop, phone, tablet, showed the same photo when I unlocked it. A Polaroid of me asleep in that chair, taken from inside the room at a height no human could stand without a knock. Ladder. I stared at it until the details started to feel personal. The way my hand curled around my own wrist, The way my jaw slackened the tiny wet spot on the pillow where I drooled. It wasn't just surveillance. It was intimacy. It was ownership. I finally went back to the vendor page because I needed to see if the internet would confess. The listing was gone. In its place was a new one with a single sentence. If you received photos, you're already in the customer database. And beneath that, a line that made my stomach drop harder than any threat. Thank you for confirming your address. That last line was the part that truly broke me, because I'd never typed my real address anywhere in Tor. I'd been careful, or I thought I had been. I called my internet provider and had them replace my modem. I factory reset everything that could be reset. None of it mattered. 2 nights later, I found a Polaroid slid under my door. It showed my doorknob, and taped to it was a spare key I didn't own. On the back, in the same neat block letters, it said, "Delivery complete." Under that, "Now you know what the road really ships." After the photos started arriving like bills I couldn't stop paying, I decided the only safe rule was this: nothing physical, nothing that could cross from a hidden website into my real hallway. I told myself I'd stop clicking listings, stop feeding the machine with my curiosity, stop acting like I could investigate a place built to erase consequences. Then I saw the post that was designed for people exactly like me. People who think skepticism is armor. Haunted hard drive. $5. As is. No returns. It wasn't even trying to be credible. It read like a Halloween gag, like an old creepypasta you'd forward to friends with a laugh. But underneath it were dozens of replies from usernames that felt too calm, too practiced. Mine had family videos. Mine had the night feed. If you get one, don't plug it into anything you care about. I should have closed the tab. Instead, I felt that stubborn professional itch, the one that says, if I can explain it, it can't hurt me. I paid the $5, not because I believed in ghosts, but because I wanted to prove the horror was just code and psychology. Nothing supernatural. Nothing that could reach through a screen and touch my life. When the drive arrived 2 days later, I hated how relieved I felt again. Like part of me craved the confirmation that the nightmare had a schedule. It came in a padded mailer, with no branding and no note. Just a small 2.5-inch drive, wrapped in bubble plastic, old enough to have scuffs and fingerprints baked into the metal. I didn't bring it inside my apartment. I took it to my garage and used an old laptop I kept for repairs. A machine with no personal files, no saved passwords, no Wi-Fi, configured the kind of sacrificial setup you use when you don't trust what you're about to touch. I even unplugged the router for good measure, because paranoia feels smart when it's wearing a checklist. The drive spun up with that soft, dusty whir that always makes me think of attics. It mounted cleanly, no weird partitions, no obvious malware auto-run. For a moment I felt stupid. Then I opened the only folder on it, and my throat tightened so fast I tasted metal. The folder was named Home Videos. Inside were subfolders labeled by year: 2014, 2015, 2016. Years that weren't just random. They were the years I'd lived in different apartments across 2 states. Years I remembered by lease dates and breakups and jobs I'd quit. The first video file was called Kitchen Night 1. I clicked play, and my stomach dropped as if the floor had given up. It was my old kitchen, the one with the cracked tile by the fridge. The camera angle was high, aimed down from the top of a cabinet, and in the frame was me, 3 years younger, wearing an undershirt I'd forgotten I owned, standing at the sink at 2:13 a.m., like I couldn't sleep. I watched myself pour water, stare into nothing, rub my face the way people do when they think no one can see them. There was no dramatic jump scare, no shadow in the corner, no whisper. That was worse because it meant the point wasn't to scare me in a cheap way. The point was to show me that privacy had been gone for years, and I'd never noticed. I scrubbed forward and saw another clip from a different apartment, then another, each one. A quiet slice of my life. Me coming home with groceries, me arguing on the phone, me sitting at my desk with my head in my hands. Some clips were in daylight, some in the dim blue of a TV left on for company. The camera was always placed just wrong enough to feel invasive. Too high, too far, like a person trying not to be caught. I told myself it had to be fake, deep fakes, staged recreations, some sick project built from stolen social media images. Then I noticed a detail I couldn't explain. A tiny burn mark on the countertop from a pan I'd dropped once. A mark I'd never photographed. A mark I'd only noticed after it happened. The videos didn't just resemble my life. They documented it. I checked the file metadata, hoping for a clue, and the creation dates were clean, almost sterile, as if someone had stripped them. But the file names had timestamps embedded, and the timestamps matched nights. I remembered because I'd been anxious, or lonely, or too wired to sleep. That's when I realized the haunted part wasn't a ghost. It was an archive, a collection, a product. My hand shook as I opened the next folder. It wasn't labeled by year. It was labeled by address. Not cities, exact street addresses down to apartment numbers. My addresses. All of them. And then one folder I didn't recognize yet, but a quick search on my phone confirmed it my current building. I didn't click those videos. I couldn't. I opened a text file and started taking notes, trying to turn dread into data, when a new folder appeared on the drive window by itself, as if it had been waiting. It was named Live. I told myself not to click it, and then I clicked it. Because the dark web doesn't need force. It just needs that 1 second where curiosity outruns caution. A player opened with no controls, and the image was my garage in real time, from a high corner angle I couldn't find. I watched my own back hunched over the laptop, and then behind me in the frame, the garage door handle turned a fraction of an inch, like someone outside was testing the lock. I spun around. The door was still. On the screen, the handle turned again slower, and the camera zoomed in on my neck. I ripped the cable out. The feed didn't stop until the frame froze on my face, and a sentence typed itself across the bottom. You keep watching. I sat back in the garage chair, staring at the file tree, and felt something heavy settle behind my ribs. The kind of dread that isn't fear of pain, but fear of meaning. Fear that I'd been mapped. I ejected the drive. I unplugged it. I put it in a metal toolbox and snapped the latch like I was closing a coffin. I went upstairs, washed my hands until my knuckles burned, and tried to convince myself I'd done the smart thing. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. You didn't watch the current folder. I froze because I hadn't typed those words anywhere. Another message followed. Don't worry, we watched it for you. I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the idea that someone had filmed me for years, stored it, named it, packaged it, sold it for $5 like a thrift item. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard a soft scrape from the hallway outside my apartment, like tape being peeled from a surface. I didn't open the door. In the morning, there was nothing on the mat, nothing under the door, just the normal quiet of neighbors pretending not to see each other. I went to the garage to destroy the drive, because logic told me it was evidence, and my body told me it was poison. The toolbox was open. The drive was gone. I checked the garage camera feed on my phone, and the video from 1:58 a.m. to 2:04 a.m. had been replaced with a single still frame me in the garage, lit by the laptop's glow, staring at the screen, with my mouth half open like someone had paused my life at the exact moment my denial died. In the corner of the frame behind me, there was a shape that looked like a person standing just outside the garage door, blurred by motion too tall to be a trick of shadows. Below, the still image burned into the file like a caption was one line, "You keep souvenirs." Then my phone vibrated again, and a Tor message appeared, even though Tor wasn't open. Next time, don't buy the storage. Buy the eraser. There are certain listings you see once and wish you could unsee, not because they're gory, but because they make you understand how cheaply some people price a human life. The night after the hard drive disappeared from my toolbox, I promised myself I'd stop treating the dark web like a documentary and start treating it like a fire. Close the door. Don't breathe the smoke. Then, at 1:17 a.m., I opened Tor anyway, because fear and curiosity are siblings that pretend they've never met. I told myself I was only checking whether my name was still floating around in those forums, whether the customer database had moved on. That's when I saw it in the marketplace feed, written in the same cheerful sales language you'd use for a belt or a watch, human leather wallet. The thumbnail was blurred mercifully, but the description didn't try to hide what it was selling. It talked about texture and craftsmanship and authenticity, and it ended with a line that made my stomach seize, made to order. I didn't click for more photos. I didn't negotiate. I didn't ask questions. I stared at the words until they felt like a stain on my eyes. Then I did what a reasonable person does when they find something that shouldn't exist. I tried to report it. That sounds noble until you try it and realize how the system is designed to make you feel helpless. The listing was on a mirror of a mirror hosted who knows where, and every report button either did nothing or routed to a dead page. I took screenshots anyway, because I still believed evidence mattered. I wrote down the vendor name, the wallet, address, the product code. I sent everything to the one contact I had in law enforcement, a college friend who'd moved into cybercrime. His reply came an hour later. Don't touch it. Don't engage. It's probably bait. Bait. As if the worst thing about that listing was what it could do to me, not what it implied about someone else. I shut the laptop and sat in my kitchen with the lights on, trying to swallow my own heartbeat. Around 2:40 a.m., my phone buzzed. Not Tor. A normal text. No number displayed, just a blank sender field, like the message had been mailed from the air. It said, "You looked." A second message followed. "Serious buyers get samples." I turned my phone off. I put it in a drawer. I tried to sleep. In the morning, my front door camera showed nothing unusual. No stranger, no package, no shadow lingering in the hallway. That should have calmed me. Instead, it made my skin crawl because I'd learned what it meant when my camera showed nothing. It meant someone knew how to step between frames. At noon, I got a delivery notification from my building's mailroom system for a package I hadn't ordered. I told myself to leave it there. I walked downstairs anyway because the dark web had already trained me like a dog. Ring the bell, watch me come running. The clerk handed me a small, padded envelope with my name spelled correctly, my apartment number perfect, and no return address. It weighed almost nothing. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely sign. I carried it upstairs like it was fragile glass and poisonous at the same time. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the table and stared at it for 10 full minutes, waiting for someone to knock for my speaker, to wake up for some new message to tell me what to do. Nothing happened. That silence felt like permission. I opened the envelope with a knife and found a sealed plastic pouch inside the kind you'd use for evidence. In the pouch was a small rectangle of tan material, about the size of a bandage, and a business card, printed in glossy black. The card said only, "Sample." Under that you seem curious. There were no pictures, no gore, nothing overtly monstrous, just a bland little piece of something that looked like leather, and the knowledge that someone wanted me to wonder what it had been. I told myself it was fake. It had to be fake. People sell human artifacts online, the same way they sell haunted dolls. I went to my sink and scrubbed my hands even though I'd worn gloves because disgust isn't always rational. Then my laptop chimed with a news alert. Local. Missing person. The photo showed a young man with tired eyes and a distinctive tattoo on his wrist. 3 thin lines crossing, like a tally mark. My breath caught because the little sample in the pouch had a faint impression on one edge, not a clear tattoo, more like the ghost of ink pressed into skin. I sat down hard. I stared at that faint mark until it felt like it was staring back. That's the moment the horror shifted for me from someone is messing with me to someone is using me. Because the sample wasn't just a threat, it was a test. It was meant to measure whether I'd flinch, whether I'd report, whether I'd go quiet. My phone turned itself back on in the drawer and buzzed like a trapped insect. I didn't touch it. The screen lit through the crack and displayed one line. "Do you want the full wallet?" I didn't answer. A second line appeared. "We can engrave initials." A third. "Or we can engrave silence." I grabbed the pouch, shoved it into a shoebox, and drove across town to the police station with my hazards on like I was transporting something alive. They took the envelope. They took my statement. They promised follow-up with the kind of tired sympathy people reserve for victims of invisible crimes. I went home feeling hollow, because I couldn't shake the idea that I'd just delivered exactly what the vendor wanted. A reaction, a chain of custody, proof that I could be herded. The next morning, my friend from cybercrime called and asked one question. Did you report it? When I said yes, he went quiet for a second and then said, then they'll use you. He told me the listing was already being reposted on a private board with my screenshots attached, framed as proof of authenticity. I opened Tor and found the thread pinned like an ad. The comments weren't horrified. They were excited like shoppers. One user wrote, if he reported it, it's real. Another wrote, send him another sample. He boosts sales. Then I saw the line that made my hands go numb. My building address posted under the words, locale delivery available, as if my home had become a storefront for the curious. I slammed the laptop shut and pressed my ear to my door, listening for footsteps that didn't need to exist for the threat to feel real. That night, my hallway camera recorded 5 minutes of clean footage, then replaced it with a single still image. It was my front door from the inside, taken at eye level as if someone stood in my hallway and lifted a camera. On the doormat, in plain view, was another black envelope I hadn't seen arrive. Across the still image, white text had been added like a caption, "Thank you for the advertisement." I opened my door, and the envelope was there, real warm in my hand, like it had just been carried. Inside was my own screenshot printout from the wallet, listing the one I'd taken to the police, except someone had circled the price in red and written beneath it, "Discount for loyal viewers." Then, as if the universe wanted to finish the lesson, my phone received one last message. You don't have to buy it to be part of it. You already helped us sell. I sat on my floor with my back against the wall and realized the dark web doesn't only trade in forbidden objects. It trades in witnesses, in people who look and then try to pretend looking didn't change them. At 2:11 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from a number that wasn't a number, just a blank sender field, like the text had been written straight onto the screen. It said, "You don't need Tor to shop with me." I hadn't opened Tor in days. I deleted the browser, wiped the wallet, changed passwords, and told myself I was done feeding my curiosity. The message came anyway, followed by a second line that made my stomach go cold. My full street address and apartment number typed perfectly. No typos, no hesitation, like a fact pulled from a file. Then a third line arrived, friendly, almost cheerful. "Fake ID vendor here. Saw your wallet post. You're trending." I sat up so fast my neck popped. My first instinct was technical denial. I checked my phone settings, my carrier account, my email rules, anything that could explain how a stranger got inside my life. Nothing was obviously wrong. That was the point. The vendor didn't need me to find the leak. He needed me to feel it. Another message. "Basic package is cheap, but you need the premium. Your current name is burned." I didn't reply. I stared at the screen until the glow hurt, trying to convince myself it was just doxing, just someone who'd scraped data from breaches like everyone else. Then the message that shattered that rational angle arrived. Timed like a punch. Look down. Gray shirt. Small coffee stain on the left hem. My eyes dropped to my shirt, and the tiny stain I hadn't noticed all day. My mouth went dry. I stood and turned slowly in my living room, scanning corners like the air could confess. The vendor waited 30 seconds as if giving me time to panic properly, then sent another line. "Don't worry. I'm not in your apartment. Not tonight." That one word, "tonight," did more damage than any threat, because it implied a schedule. I opened my hallway camera feed on my laptop, hands shaking so hard I missed the password twice. The hallway looked empty, fluorescent, and boring. Then the feed stuttered for 1 second, a single skipped frame like a blink, and when it resumed, there was a strip of black tape on my doorframe that hadn't been there before, placed neatly at eye level like a marker. My phone buzzed again. We mark regular customers. I didn't sleep. I sat in the chair facing the door until dawn, listening to the building settle, waiting for footsteps that never needed to come because the fear was already inside. In the morning, I called my friend in cybercrime, the only person who had sounded remotely calm about any of this. He didn't ask why I was awake. He just sighed, like he'd been expecting the call. "Don't respond," he said. "The ID guys aren't just sellers. They're recruiters. They want proof you'll obey." I told him I hadn't responded. He paused, then asked, "Did you react?" I didn't answer because how do you explain that fear itself feels like a reply? When I hung up, my laptop chimed and a new file appeared on the desktop, even though the laptop wasn't connected to anything. Preview. JPEG. I hadn't downloaded it. It was simply there, sitting like an accusation. I opened it with the same stupid curiosity that had started this whole spiral, and my stomach turned over. It was a driver's license layout with a different name, a different date of birth, a different state, yet the photo was me. Not a selfie, not a picture I'd posted online. It was me at my desk in my apartment, eyes slightly unfocused, as if I'd been caught mid-thought. The exact expression I make when I'm reading something late at night and trying not to admit I'm scared. Under the image, the signature matched my handwriting with a lazy curve I only use when I'm tired. I slammed the laptop shut and heard from the hallway a soft scrape like someone peeling tape off a surface. My phone buzzed. The preview is free. The delivery costs compliance. Then, "We need you on camera. Wear it tomorrow. Walk past your lobby cam at 900 a.m. That's all." I read that line 5 times because it wasn't asking me to commit a crime. It was asking me to be an actor. It wanted the clip. It wanted proof that I'd accepted the new identity in public. That was how it became real. That was how it became something they could sell. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't go to work. I stayed inside like my apartment was a bunker, and my own face was a liability. At 8:58 a.m., my phone buzzed anyway. 2 minutes. At 9:01, "You're late." At 9:05, "Fine. We'll use the old footage." My blood ran cold as I realized they weren't bluffing. They didn't need me to walk past a camera if they already had a camera that could be anywhere. The door handle jiggled once, slow and careful, not a break-in attempt, just a test, like someone checking whether I was awake. Then, silence. When I opened my hallway feed again, the camera showed my door from the far end of the corridor, and for a single frame I saw something that made my vision blur. A man standing close to my door, head tilted as if reading the peephole face, turned away from the lens. The next frame was empty. The feed didn't show him walking away. It just erased him. My phone vibrated. "We don't force entry. We verify presence." I called the building manager and asked about hallway cameras, about maintenance staff, about anyone who could place tape on my doorframe. He laughed politely and told me, "Sometimes kids play pranks. Sometimes tenants argue. Sometimes people overreact." Overreact. I stared at the black strip of tape until it felt like the tape was staring back. That afternoon, an envelope appeared under my door with no sound, no footsteps, nothing recorded in the hallway feed, just cardboard sliding into my life like it belonged there. Inside was a plastic ID in a clear sleeve. The card felt warm like it had been in someone's pocket, and the photo was me, candid, unposed, pulled from a moment I couldn't place. The name wasn't mine. The address line was my city, but not my street. The whole thing looked more legitimate than it had any right to look like it had been printed by the same machine that prints real. Tucked behind it was a note on plain paper, "Now you have options." Under that, Option 1, wear it. Option 2, keep being you and keep getting delivered. At the bottom, in smaller letters, "P.S. Don't take this to cops. We don't sell paper. We sell leverage." I sat at my kitchen table staring at the card until my eyes burned. I tried to imagine a future where I used it even once, and my mind recoiled like I'd imagined stepping into traffic. Then my phone buzzed one last time for the day. "Smile, tomorrow." I laughed once out loud, a short, broken sound, because the idea was so sick it looped back into absurd. Then I realized the laugh had been the .2 noise reaction confirmation that I was still playing. I put the card back in the sleeve, slid it into a drawer, like hiding it could undo the fact it existed, and taped over my laptop camera again, even though I'd already taped it twice, because sometimes rituals feel like control. That night, as I lay on the couch with the lights on, I saw a faint glow in my peripheral vision. The tiny webcam light behind the tape began to turn on slowly, patiently, like an eye opening behind a closed lid. The night my webcam light turned on by itself, I realized how childish my idea of privacy had been, like I thought a little sliding cover could stop a world that runs on access. I had the camera taped, not just covered tape over the lens, tape over the tiny microphone holes, taped like I was sealing evidence. After the fake ID vendor hinted he needed me on camera, I slept on my couch with the laptop shut and unplugged, because I didn't trust the way machines sit there so quietly in the dark, pretending they aren't listening. Around 1:48 a.m., I saw the glow from the corner of my eye, the webcam indicator light, steady and calm, shining through the edge of the tape like it had grown underneath it. My body went cold in a single drop, like an elevator, losing cable. I stared at the laptop for a long second, waiting for the light to be a dream artifact the way you sometimes hallucinate your phone vibrating when it doesn't. It didn't stop. It just stared. I didn't touch the laptop at first, because touching it felt like admitting it could ask for my attention and receive it. My phone buzzed instead, because of course it did. Nice cover. Then covers are for children. Adults use permissions. I jumped up, yanked the power cord from the wall, and the light stayed on for 3 more seconds, bright as a confession, before it finally clicked off. The silence after that felt staged like a show that had reached intermission. I opened the laptop anyway, because fear makes you do inspections, and inspections make you feel like you're doing something. The tape was intact. The camera was still sealed. There was no open application, no obvious remote session. The system logs were boring. That was the most terrifying part. Nothing looked wrong because whatever was happening didn't need to look wrong to me. Then the laptop chimed, and a file appeared on the desktop by itself, as if the machine had coughed something up. Stream. MP4. I didn't download it. I didn't click any links. It was simply there, bold and waiting. I opened it with my cursor hovering like it might burn me, and the video began with a familiar angle. My living room, my couch, my coffee table, my lamp. The timestamp in the corner matched the exact minute the webcam light had turned on. Then the frame widened in a way my webcam couldn't manage, showing more of the room than it should have been able to see from the laptop's position. The camera in the video wasn't my webcam. It was somewhere higher, somewhere that could look down. And there I was, on the couch, half under a blanket, eyes closed, breathing shallow, my face slack with the kind of sleep you only get when you're exhausted from being afraid. The sound in the video wasn't a mic picking up room noise. It was too clean, too close. I could hear my breath, as if the microphone was inches from my mouth. A quiet clicking ran beneath it, steady and patient like a fingernail tapping plastic on purpose. My phone buzzed again. You're better on video than in photos. I paused the file, and my reflection in the black screen looked like a stranger, pale and rigid. I opened my hallway camera feed, then my living room camera, then my phone's camera, searching for a second set of eyes. Everything looked normal. The normality started to feel like mockery. My phone buzzed. Stop looking for the lens. Look for the habit. I didn't understand that line until I started replaying the last month in my head the way I'd been trained to check feeds, to read messages, to respond with panic, to turn my fear into predictable behavior. That's what they meant by habit. They didn't need a permanent camera if they could make me position myself for one. Then a new message arrived, and this one didn't bother with cleverness. Open your laptop again. I didn't. Another. We'll do it for you. My laptop screen woke by itself, and the webcam light flickered on again, faint behind the tape, as if the machine was smiling under a gag. A chat window appeared, with no app name, no sender label, just text on a blank field, smile. I slammed the lid shut so hard it hurt my palm. The chat continued on my phone instead, like the conversation could migrate anywhere it wanted. You think closing things ends them. Then, you think unplugging things erases them. Then, where did you put the fake ID? My stomach clenched because I hadn't told anyone where I'd put it. I hadn't even moved it. The drawer was across the room. My phone buzzed again. Third drawer, left side, under the bills. I stood up slowly and walked to the drawer as if I were approaching a wild animal. The fake ID sleeve was exactly where it should be. What shouldn't have been there was the new object resting on top of it. A tiny square of black tape, identical to the strip that had appeared on my doorframe, with one word written in thin white ink, EY. I backed away from the drawer and felt my mind trying to assemble explanations. Maintenance workers, neighbors, pranksters, sleepwalking, anything that kept this from being what it felt like someone had been inside my apartment while I slept, and they'd left a joke. I pulled the smoke detector down again. Trembling found nothing. Then checked the vents in the corners where walls meet ceilings, because paranoia makes you inspect geometry. Nothing. The absence felt deliberate, like the real camera was somewhere I'd never think to look because it wasn't a camera at all. My phone buzzed. You're doing the scavenger hunt again. Then we can turn the light on any time. It's your favorite cue. And the worst part was realizing they were right. The webcam light was a cue that made me freeze, and that freeze was useful. I unplugged my router, boxed up my smart speaker, covered the laptop with a towel like I was tucking in a corpse, and left the apartment. I drove to an electronics recycling center in broad daylight, with the laptop on the passenger seat, because I needed to get it out of my space, out of my air. I handed it to the clerk like it was contaminated. The clerk looked at me the way people look at conspiracy theorists, and then shrugged, because he didn't care about my fear, only the barcode. I walked out, feeling almost light, stupidly hopeful, like removing the object removed the access. Halfway home, my phone buzzed with a photo, me at the counter, my hands sliding the laptop across my face, tense, under it. Thank you for the donation. Then another message. We don't need your webcam. I pulled over so fast, my tires chirped. I looked around the street, heart pounding, scanning for anyone holding a phone up at me. No one. My phone buzzed again. You think the light is the camera. That's adorable. I drove home with my hands locked on the wheel, and when I walked into my apartment, the first thing I noticed was the silence, the kind that feels like a room holding its breath. I checked the drawer. The fake ID was still there. The square of tape labeled EYE was gone. In its place was a new strip, smaller, with 2 words. Sleep next. My skin crawled. I stood in my living room, staring at that message, until my eyes watered and I finally understood what they were doing. The webcam light wasn't proof they were watching through the webcam. It was proof they could make me feel watched on command. And feeling watched changes how you live. My phone buzzed one last time, simple and direct, with no jokes left in it. I can see you sleeping. Then, as if to prove how much control I'd already surrendered, my hallway feed notification popped up, and the thumbnail showed my webcam light on in the corner of my empty desk, except the laptop was gone. The first time the message said, I can see you sleeping, I tried to laugh, because laughter is what you do when your brain needs to pretend this is still a story you can close with a button. It came through as a plain notification on my phone, with no sender ID, no app badge, just words, sitting on glass like they belong there. I can see you sleeping. 2 seconds later, another line arrived. Left side. 1 sock off. You keep your hand under your chin. I was on my couch, half awake, fully dressed, and I looked down at my feet the way a person looks down at an open wound. 1 sock was off. My hand was under my chin. I sat up so fast, the blanket slid to the floor, and my first instinct was to do what I always do when fear shows up, wearing technology, check settings, check logs, check anything that can be checked. I opened every app, searched for unknown permissions, ran antivirus scans that were mostly placebo, then opened my hallway camera feed, then my living room camera, then the building lobby feed I could access through the tenant portal. Everything looked normal. The normality felt like a dare. My phone buzzed again. Don't waste battery. I'm not in your phone. Then I'm in your night. I told myself it was a guess, a lucky read, a psychological trick. But the next message landed with a detail that couldn't be guessed unless someone had been close enough to hear it. You grind your teeth at 2:06. You stop when the radiator clicks. I froze, because my radiator does click at night. A sharp little tick that always wakes me for a second before my brain slides back under. The idea that someone had been listening to my sleep made my skin crawl, in a way photos never did. Photos felt like images. This felt like presence. I didn't sleep again that night. I stayed upright, lights on, laptop open to camera feeds, like prayer. Around 4:20 a.m., my phone buzzed with a new line. Sit still. You're easier to frame. Then, my living room camera froze for a single second, and when it resumed, the timestamp was correct, but the picture was subtly wrong, like a version of my room that had been remembered instead of recorded. My coffee table looked a few inches farther left. The lampshade looked straighter. The couch pillow that should have been crumpled looked neatly placed. That's when I realized the horror wasn't just that someone could watch, it was that someone could rewrite. I shut everything down, grabbed my keys, and drove to a hotel across town with cash, because part of me still believed distance and anonymity were things you could buy. I left my phone off in the glove compartment and used a cheap prepaid burner I'd bought months ago, just in case, the kind of purchase you make when you want to feel prepared and don't want to admit why. The hotel room smelled like detergent and old carpet, and the blandness made me hopeful. I checked the ceiling corners, the smoke detector, the vent cover. Nothing. I double-locked the door and wedged a chair under the handle, like I was a kid afraid of monsters. Then, just as I started to drift, the TV turned on by itself to a blank grey channel. No sound, just a dim flicker that painted the room in weak light. I reached for the remote, and the screen displayed text. Instead, black letters, on grey, like an old terminal. New room. Same sleeper. My throat tightened. The burner phone buzzed on the bedside table. Unknown sender. Right side, tonight, it read. You switched because you think it matters. I stared at the message until my eyes watered because I had switched sides. I had done it without thinking, the way you do small things in fear, hoping the universe notices you're trying. Another message arrived. Don't look up, just listen. The air vent above the bed let out a soft sigh as the HVAC kicked on, and with it came a faint sound that didn't belong to the machine. A gentle tapping, rhythmic, slow and patient. The tapping moved, not in volume but in direction, like it was traveling along the ductwork toward my room. I pressed my ear to the wall and felt how ridiculous I must look. A grown adult listening for a ghost in an air conditioner. The tapping stopped. The burner phone buzzed again. You hear me better when you're scared. I backed away from the bed. I stood in the middle of the room trying to decide whether to run, whether running even had meaning if the watcher could follow me without footsteps. My eyes drifted to the mirror over the dresser, and in the mirror I saw the small red light of the TV's camera bar at the bottom edge of the screen, a detail I'd never noticed in any hotel. It blinked once, steady and calm. My phone buzzed. Smile. Hotels have better angles. I yanked the TV plug from the wall. The screen went black. The tapping in the vent returned immediately faster now, like impatience. Then the room phone rang the old landline on the nightstand that no one uses anymore. I stared at it, and it rang again, loud and insistent. When I finally picked it up, I expected silence. Instead, I heard my own breathing amplified, as if the line had connected me to a microphone in the room. I slammed the receiver down. The burner phone buzzed with the simplest message yet, go back to sleep. I didn't. I sat against the bathroom door until morning, and when the sun finally cut through the curtains, I felt foolish for thinking daylight would save me. On the pillow where my head hadn't touched the bed all night, someone had placed a single strip of black tape, the same kind that had marked my doorframe, and written on it in thin white ink were 3 words that ended my last illusion of safety. We saw you. I went straight to the front desk with the tape in my fist, and the clerk gave me a blank smile that said he'd already dealt with enough strange guests to stop caring. He told me housekeeping hadn't entered the room, that the security system showed no one walking my corridor after midnight, and he offered to comp the stay like money could refund the feeling of being handled. I asked to see the footage anyway. He pulled it up on a monitor behind the counter. The hallway outside my door played on loop, empty and fluorescent, and for a moment I almost believed him, until I noticed the timestamp jump from 20558 to 20602, with no glitch artifacts, as clean as an edit. 4 seconds missing. I pointed at the screen and asked how a camera drops frames in the exact minute my teeth grind and the radiator clicks. The clerk shrugged and said, "Sometimes the system just does that." I walked out, carrying my fear like luggage. Before I reached my car, the burner phone buzzed. "Good eye. You're learning cuts." Then it buzzed again. We didn't need the hotel camera. We needed you to feel alone. On the drive home, the burner's email, an address I had never typed into any browser, received a receipt that wasn't from any company. Trial complete sleep view. Attached was a single still image from inside the hotel room, taken from the ceiling corner I'd checked, showing me sitting against the bathroom door at dawn, eyes red, refusing to lie down. Across the image, like a watermark, were the words, "USA prefers, awake." Under the attachment, one final line added at the bottom, "Next time we charge in files." When I got back to my apartment, my phone lit up one more time with a quiet instruction. Backup, nothing. Then it went dark. The ransom note arrived without a ransom. That's the part people never believe until it happens to them. One night your files are normal, and the next night your life is a museum where every exhibit is behind glass you can't touch. I came home, opened my laptop, and every folder on my desktop had the same blank icon, like someone had drained the meaning out of my memories. My photos wouldn't open. My notes wouldn't open. Even the dumb little text file where I kept old Wi-Fi passwords from previous jobs opened as unreadable symbols. Every file name had been replaced with a long chain of characters, and every file ended in the same new extension, like someone had stamped my entire life with a brand. In the middle of the desktop sat one clean file that still had a readable name. Read ME now. I opened it, and a plain text window appeared. Black letters on white, no logo, no cartoon skull, no countdown timer. Just a message written like someone trying very hard to sound reasonable. "This is not about money," it began. My stomach still dropped because even before I finished reading, I understood what that meant. Money would have been simple. Money would have been a transaction. This was something else. The next line said, "We don't want your dollars. We want your silence." Then it listed in perfect order the things I had done that I thought were private, the screenshots I'd taken, the email I'd sent to my friend in cybercrime, the trip to the police station with the evidence pouch, the hotel I ran to, like distance could buy safety. It even typed the detail that had haunted me the most, as if it knew that was the hook it could pull whenever it wanted. At 206, you grind your teeth. At 20602, our camera drops frames. Don't flatter yourself. We edit for comfort. My hands went numb. I tried the usual rituals, the ones that normally fix digital problems, reboot safe mode scan, restore anything that feels like turning a steering wheel even if the car is already sliding. It didn't matter. My backup drive was encrypted too. My cloud client logged in and showed green check marks, like everything was healthy, but when I clicked the restore option, it presented me with the same blank icons as if the cloud had been poisoned upstream. The note knew I would try. The next paragraph was written like instructions for training a dog. "Open your phone," it said. "Record a voice memo. Say, 'I looked and I helped.' Play it once. Delete it." I stared at that line and felt a wave of disgust, so strong it made my eyes sting because it wasn't asking for proof. It was asking for practice. It wanted me to rehearse surrender. At the bottom of the note was a list of rules that felt less like extortion and more like ownership. Don't contact law enforcement. Again, don't post about this. Don't save new screenshots. Don't move. Don't run. Then it ended with a sentence that made the room feel smaller. If you refuse, we don't leak you. We improve you. I didn't understand that until my speakers popped with a soft click, and a voice began to read the note aloud, slowly, calmly, like an audiobook. The voice was mine, not an impression, not a robotic text-to-speech. It had my pacing, my little hesitations, the way I swallow before I say something I don't want to say. I slammed the volume key down, and the reading continued at the same level as if the sound was coming from the walls. My phone buzzed with a new message. You hear yourself better when you're scared. Then my screen flashed, and a video file opened by itself. It was short, only a few seconds. It showed me in that hotel room at dawn, sitting against the bathroom door, eyes red, and in the corner was the watermark. Again, user prefers awake. The clip ended with my own voice saying, "Clearly, I looked and I helped." I did not remember saying it. The file name beneath the clip was a joke I could barely breathe. Through compliance. Sample. Another message arrived immediately, like a punch, that lands and then disappears. So you feel it later, we made the memo for you. You're welcome. I sat there, staring at my dead files, and my living voice coming from a machine, and I realized how neatly they'd removed every option that would have made this feel like crime. They didn't want my money. They wanted me quiet. They wanted me trained. The note refreshed and added one last instruction. Go to sleep. Beneath it, like a bedtime story ending, it added, good night, or else. I sat there long after the screen went dark, listening to my own breathing like it was evidence. I tried to do the brave, responsible thing and rebuild, fresh, install, new drive, anything that would let me pretend this was just malware and not a relationship. But even the act of wiping felt anticipated. When I opened my recovery options, the cursor drifted toward the choice that meant total loss, as if someone wanted me to press it. My printer, which I hadn't used in months, whirred on its own and spat out a single page. One sentence sat in the center, "We prefer you desperate." I unplugged it, and my laptop chimed anyway. A new folder appeared on the desktop, named Previews. Inside were tiny thumbnails of my own encrypted photos, just enough to recognize faces, each watermarked with a warped onion outline. The last thumbnail was my face asleep, and beneath it a caption that felt like a schedule. Tomorrow you pay in files. Then my phone's lock screen changed to the same watermark, and 3 words I'd already heard in my head. Go back to sleep. The first time I saw my own face on that forum, my brain refused to process it as real, like my eyes were reading a sentence they didn't have permission to understand. I'd been living in a fog of warnings and edits and missing seconds, and I was honestly trying to act normal again. That day, I went to work, smiled at people, laughed at the right moments, and even convinced myself the silence meant I'd been dropped as a target. Then late that night, I made one stupid choice. I searched my own name, not on Google, but inside the same hidden corners where the dark web had been leaving fingerprints in my life. I told myself I was checking for leaks, checking for damage, checking for evidence. That's the lie the curious tell themselves so they can keep looking. A thread popped up on a private board with a title that made my stomach clamp down, sleep packs real weekly. No gore, no frets, just the casual tone of a product drop. I clicked because the word weekly felt like a schedule, and schedules are how you turn a person into inventory. The page loaded fast, too fast, like it had been waiting for me. The first post was a grid of thumbnails, each one a dim, grainy still of someone sleeping, each face lit by the soft glow of a phone or a TV, each file labeled like a trading card. And there, 3rd row down, was me. Not a selfie. Not a profile picture. Me asleep on my couch, mouth slightly open, one sock-off hand tucked under my chin. The exact pose the messages had described. I stared until my vision blurred, because the image carried a kind of intimacy you can't explain to someone who hasn't felt it. The sense that your private helplessness has been framed, sized, and priced. Under the thumbnail was a short description written like customer service. Mail late 20 seconds, 30 seconds, city apartment, reacts to cues, wakes, easily, good audio, good audio. like my breathing was a feature. The comments beneath were worse than the image, because they weren't shocked. They were normal. Does he talk in his sleep? Any eye-open shots? Can you get one where he checks the door? I want. The radiator click moment. People were asking for the tiny details that had been used to break me like they were ordering toppings. Then I saw the line that made my skin go cold in a deeper way. New set comes after he checks feeds. I realized they weren't just watching me sleep. They were watching what I did when I thought I was being watched. They were packaging my fear itself. I scrolled up and down, hoping I'd misread, hoping it was someone else who looked like me, hoping the room would tilt and I'd wake up. Then I noticed a watermark on the images, faint but consistent. A warped onion outline melted at the edges, like a logo left too close to heat. It wasn't just a forum post. It was branding. I did what I'd done every time. Screenshots, notes, timestamps, the desperate behavior of someone trying to turn horror into a report. I copied the thread URL, saved it in a text file, and started drafting a message to my cybercrime friend, the only person who had ever spoken about this like it could be contained. Before I could hit send, the page refreshed by itself. A new comment appeared at the top, posted seconds ago by a user with a name that felt like a joke, aimed directly at me. Welcome home. The comment contained one sentence: don't steal our previews. My hands went numb. Another comment appeared under it. He's here. The thread moved. Not deleted, moved. The page redirected to an error, and in its place a new link appeared in my browser history that I hadn't clicked. Members, room, verified. I didn't open it. My cursor hovered over it, like a finger over a trigger. My phone buzzed at the same time, with a message that made my stomach drop. You look better in the forum light. I stood up and checked my apartment the way you check a room after a nightmare, as if furniture can reassure you. Everything was where it should be. That was the new pattern. The world looked normal while the meaning rotted underneath it. I sat back down and opened my email draft again, and the text I'd been typing had changed. Not erased. Edited. A sentence had been added in the middle in plain letters, as if someone had leaned over my shoulder and joined the conversation. Please stop. I understand. I didn't write that. I deleted it. It reappeared. I deleted it again. It reappeared again, and this time a new line followed. Don't make us show them your wake-up face. My phone buzzed with a photo attachment. It was me, right then, sitting at my desk, eyes wide, lips parted slightly, the exact expression I make when I'm trying not to panic and failing. The angle was high, like from the top corner of my room. I looked up instinctively, scanning the ceiling corners I'd already checked 100 times. Nothing. My phone buzzed again. The forum loves authenticity. That's when the real horror of the thread clicked into place. Those commenters weren't random. They were customers. And I wasn't being targeted for revenge or money. I was being cultivated for content. I opened Tor again, not because I wanted to, but because the pull of seeing what they'd done to my life felt like the only way to breathe. I searched the forum name and found it again, under a new address, like a snake shedding skin. This time, the landing page wasn't thumbnails. It was a single featured post, pinned at the top, a collage of my photos, hotel room, couch, hallway, all assembled into a neat grid with a caption that read, K's Study Reactive Sleeper. Below it, someone had written an explanation in the same detached tone you'd use for a gadget review. Subject checks, feeds on cue, responds to door handle test, moves locations under stress, suitable for routine control demonstrations. Demonstrations, like I was a training video. The comments were even more transactional here. How do you trigger the hallway test? What's his compliance score? Can you make him wave at the window? Then someone replied with a single word that turned my blood cold. Tomorrow. The page refreshed, and a countdown timer appeared at the top. Not flashy, just numbers ticking down like a microwave clock. A new banner across the page read, Live drop, 9:00 p.m. local. My phone buzzed. Be near a window at 9. I didn't reply. I shut the laptop. I unplugged it. I turned my phone off. I sat in my living room with the lights on waiting for 9, like it was a storm I could see on radar. At 8:58 my smart speaker lit up even though I'd boxed it weeks ago. From inside the box came a muffled voice, calm and faint, like someone speaking through a wall. 2 minutes. At 9:00, exactly every light in my apartment shut off at once. Not a power outage, the streetlights outside were still on. Just my lights. My blinds raised by themselves, exposing my dark living room to the bright street like a stage. My hallway camera app popped open on my tablet without me touching it, and the feed showed my living room from an angle I didn't recognize, looking down from above, as if a camera had been installed somewhere higher than my ceiling. I stood frozen in the dark. My phone, which was powered off, vibrated on the coffee table and lit up with one message: wave. I didn't. The smart speaker, muffled in its box, chuckled softly, a sound that didn't belong to electronics. "He's shy," it said, as if addressing an audience. Then my tablet screen changed from the camera feed to a web page I hadn't opened. The forum. The live drop. On the page was a single embedded video window, labeled with a title that made my skin crawl: "Tonight's Stream Window Test." Under it, the chat scrolled fast with usernames and laughing emojis that my brain refused to translate into normal language. "He's there. Do the cue. Make him check the door." I watched helpless as the chat filled with people waiting for me to move, and then my own front door handle jiggled once, slow and deliberate, the same test I'd learned to fear. My body reacted before my mind did. I took one step toward the door. The chat exploded. Yes. He moved. "Do it again." That was the moment I understood the forum wasn't just showing my life. It was steering it, using small cues to make me perform. I stopped mid-step, forced myself to stand still, and the smart speaker's muffled voice sighed with something like disappointment. My phone buzzed. "You're learning. But learning is still content." The lights came back on. The blinds lowered. Everything reset, like a prank ending, except the feeling didn't reset. My laptop, still unplugged, chimed once from inside its closed lid. On the screen, when I opened it, with shaking hands, there was a new folder on the desktop, named Thanks. Inside was a single file, rec.txt. The file contained 2 lines: live, drop completed, payout 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Then a third line appeared as I watched, typed letter by letter, like someone enjoying the sound of keys. Payment is in behavior. I sat there in the bright, normal light of my own apartment and realized the forum had done the most terrifying thing of all. It had made me doubt my own movements. Because now, every time I stood up, every time I checked a lock, every time I looked at a window, I would wonder whether I was acting for an audience I couldn't see. After the live drop, I tried to go analog the way people do when they realize convenience is just a polite word for a door left unlocked. I unplugged my smart speaker, factory reset, my thermostat, deleted the apps, cut off integrations, and told myself the worst thing a hacker can do is take control of devices, and devices can be replaced. That was my mistake. The worst thing a hacker can do isn't turning lights on and off. It's turning you into a person who responds to lights on and off. I didn't notice the first change because it was subtle, like a hand tightening a leash 1 inch at a time. I came home from work, and the hallway outside my apartment was warmer than usual, like my unit was radiating heat. Inside, the air felt too dry, too hot, like someone had been running the system. My thermostat screen glowed, even though I'd set it to manual, and turned off the smart schedule. It displayed a message that wasn't part of any normal interface. "Welcome back." I stared at it until the letters blurred, and then my phone buzzed with a message that made my stomach drop. "Your house likes routines. We do too." I tried to shut the thermostat off at the breaker. When I flipped the switch, every light in my apartment turned on at once like a spotlight. The blinds lifted halfway, not fully, just enough to expose the outline of my living room to the street, while still letting me see the outside, like someone wanted me to feel watched and still be able to watch back. My front door smart lock chirped softly, one happy beep, and the deadbolt retracted and extended twice in quick succession, as if a child were playing with it. I ran to the door and physically slid the manual chain, heart pounding. The lock beeped again, and the chain pulled tight as the door tried to open an inch and failed. Then, the lock stopped. My phone buzzed. Good. Use the chain. Chains look desperate. People like desperate. I backed away from the door and heard my smart speaker, which was unplugged and box, speak from inside the closet in a voice that sounded like it was smiling. Don't worry. We won't come in. We don't need to. Then, as if to demonstrate the point, my TV turned on by itself and displayed my own hallway camera feed zoomed in on my door. A few seconds later, the feed shifted to my living room camera, then to my laptop webcam, except I didn't own a living room camera anymore, and my laptop webcam had been destroyed. The screens weren't showing my devices. They were showing my spaces. My phone buzzed. You keep confusing objects with access. The lights dimmed slowly until my apartment was the color of a bruise. My thermostat clicked, and the temperature dropped hard enough that I could feel the chill crawling under my shirt. Then the speaker voice said, calm and bored, like customer service. Wave at the window. I didn't. Wave, it repeated, and the blinds rose higher, exposing more of me to the street, turning my living room into a lit aquarium. A car passed outside and slowed slightly, and I realized how humiliating it would look from the sidewalk. Me in my own home, lit up on command, a person being handled. My phone buzzed. We can do this every night. I rushed to the window and yanked the blind cord by hand, but the motor fought me, grinding softly like it was resisting. The blind jerked, then stopped, then raised again on its own, as if my effort had been noted and rejected. My speaker voice sighed. Manual is cute, it said, but you bought smart. The door lock chirped again, and I heard faintly the elevator in my building ding. My skin went cold because the timing felt like a cue, like they were staging a scene. My phone buzzed. Someone's coming down the hall. Do you want them to see you? I pressed my ear to the door, listening. Footsteps approached, then stopped, near my unit, then continued past. A neighbor, probably. But the way my body had reacted instantly, obediently made me feel sick, because even when the threat was a bluff, my fear still performed. The thermostat screen changed again, showing a list labeled automations. I hadn't programmed any. The list contained entries with timestamps. 9:00 p.m. Blinds up. 9:01 p.m. Lights on. 9:02 p.m. door test. 9:03 p.m. temperature drop. It read like a schedule for breaking someone. I tried to delete them. The screen flashed a simple response. No. My phone buzzed. Stop touching it. You're making noise. Then the speaker voice softened, almost gentle, which was somehow worse. We'll keep you comfortable if you behave. The temperature rose back to normal. The lights warmed. The blinds lowered a little, as if I'd been rewarded. My stomach twisted because my body immediately relaxed, and that relaxation felt like betrayal. I grabbed a toolbox and started ripping devices out like I could carve the smart out of my home. I pulled the speaker plug, cut power to the thermostat, unplugged the TV, disconnected the router, and stood in the sudden silence, panting, waiting for the relief. The relief never came. My phone, running on its own battery, buzzed with a message that made my lungs tighten. Now it's quiet enough to hear you. The hallway camera feed, which should have been dead, popped up on my phone anyway. The image showed my front door from the outside, as if someone was standing in the hallway filming it with a phone. The camera moved closer, slow and steady, until the peephole filled the frame. Then the image tilted, and for a second I saw my own eye, reflected in the peephole glass, from inside, wide and terrified. A voice came through my phone, speaker, low and calm. There you are. I stumbled back. The door handle jiggled once that same deliberate test, and I realized with a sick clarity that the smart devices weren't the only tools. The building had smart locks, smart cameras, smart elevator controls, smart meters. The whole structure I lived in was a network, and my apartment was just one node. My phone buzzed again. You can unplug your toys. You can't unplug your building. The lights in my apartment, which were supposed to be disconnected, flickered back on for a moment, just a blink, and in that blink I saw something on my coffee table that hadn't been there before. A small strip of black tape with neat white writing. I picked it up with shaking fingers. It read, "Good home." My speaker voice, coming from nowhere now, said softly, "Smart homes are for people who trust." Then it added with the casual finality of a sentence you can't argue with, "You don't trust. That's why you're interesting." The lights went out again. The thermostat clicked once, like a tongue. And in the silence, my phone buzzed with the last message of the night, the one that made me realize this wasn't about gadgets at all. Tomorrow, we try the door again. The first time I saw the words Besa Mafia on my screen, I felt an idiot's relief because at least it sounded like a scam I could explain. That name floats around the internet like a campfire, story assassins for hire, blood oaths, men in suits who make you disappear if you don't pay. The rational part of my brain grabbed it like a life raft. Good, I thought, finally. Something human, something predictable, something that wants money instead of control. The message arrived the way everything had been arriving lately. Slipping past the borders I kept rebuilding. "We saw your forum drop. If you want it to stop, you need protection." It included a link I didn't click, and a single line that made my stomach tighten. "Don't go to police again. They can't help you. We can." I didn't answer. I sat in my kitchen with the lights on, listening to my building breathe, trying to decide whether fear had already made me superstitious. Then my phone buzzed again, and the relief evaporated. "We already opened a case file," it said. "Your case file." Attached was a photo of my front door from inside the hallway, taken so close I could see the scuffs on the paint near the peephole. Under the photo was a number 11. Then a minute later, another message. "Case 11. That's you." I stared at that number until it felt like an episode title someone else had written for my life, and I realized why they used the Besa name. It wasn't to convince me they were a real mafia. It was to convince me I was already in a story where real mafia rules apply. The link they'd sent wasn't a marketplace listing. It was a private board post, the kind you can only view if you're invited, which in dark web language means someone has decided you belong. The page loaded with that same too-fast snap, and right at the top, in clean, bland text, was an offer protection package. Immediate intervention. Below it was a menu of services, written like a subscription plan. Basic. Remove your name from a thread. Standard. Stop harassment queues for 30 days. Premium permanent. Solution price varies. And beneath the menu, the hook line that made my throat go dry. If you refuse protection, a contract may be opened on you by other parties. It was a classic extortion script, dressed up in Mafia mythology. I could see the structure scare off a deadline. Then the deadline appeared on my own devices as if my home had decided to cooperate. My thermostat flashed 72 and then 24H like a countdown. My smart lock chirped once. My phone buzzed. "You have 1 day to choose." I closed the browser and tried to breathe through my nose the way people do in therapy videos. The calm lasted exactly 8 seconds. A new message arrived. "We don't need your money. We need your decision." Then, because decisions are proof. That was the part that changed the temperature in my blood. They weren't asking for cash in the way scammers do. They were asking me to step into a role, client protected, obedient. Still, fear makes you consider bargains you'd laugh at in daylight. I called my cybercrime friend again. He didn't answer. I texted. No response. I tried another friend, someone who didn't know the details just enough to keep me from feeling alone. He sent a thumbs up and a "you okay?" and I couldn't explain the truth without sounding insane. At 3:03 a.m., the phone buzzed again. "Your friends won't pick up." That's normal. Then, like a punchline, "We will." The next message was a phone call request through an app I didn't have installed, and before I could refuse, my speaker, unplugged, boxed, buried in a closet, crackled to life, and a voice came through, low and controlled. Not robotic, not theatrical, almost bored. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," it said. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The voice continued anyway, as if it didn't require my permission to have a conversation in my home. The harassment is costing people time, it said. You are a lively subject. Lively subjects attract attention. Attention attracts bids. We can close the bids. We can close the attention. My mouth went dry. Who are you? I finally managed. There was a pause, and in that pause, I heard the faint clicking sound again. The fingernail on plastic rhythm that had followed me from the first mystery box, like a signature. We're the only ones offering you an exit you can survive, the voice said. Then it added almost kindly, you want to believe we're a scam. That's healthy. Keep believing it. Just pay anyway. I didn't. I grabbed my keys and left the apartment, because sometimes movement feels like resistance, and I needed to feel something other than trapped. I drove with no destination, mind blank, and when I pulled into a gas station, my phone buzzed with a photo. It was my car, at the pump, taken from behind angle, slightly elevated, as if someone stood a few feet away with a phone. Under it, we don't do threats. We do demonstrations. I spun around. No one looked suspicious. A couple argued by a minivan. A teenager scrolled on his phone. A man in a hoodie walked inside to pay, and for a second I wanted to grab him and scream, "Are you watching me?" But that's the point, isn't it? They don't need to be any one person if they can make you suspect every person. I got back in my car, drove home, and found my apartment door slightly ajar. The chain still latched the main lock, retracted as if someone had tested it and left it like a reminder. On my doormat was an envelope with no markings. Inside was a single sheet of paper, printed like a legal notice. Notice of intent. No logo, no letterhead, just text. It stated that a third party had expressed interest in commissioning a service, and that I had one opportunity to resolve the interest by purchasing protection. It ended with one line that felt too personal to be generic. You already understand edits. You don't want the next edit to be physical. My hands shook so hard the paper fluttered. That's when the scam usually closes, when fear becomes payment. I almost did it. I almost sent money into the void just to make the messages stop. And then I saw the tiny detail that snapped my clarity back at the bottom of the page in faint grey was the warped onion watermark, the same brand mark from the sleep forum. Besa Mafia wasn't a new enemy. It was the same audience wearing a new mask. They weren't threatening me with assassins. They were threatening me with escalation for content. I went inside, locked every lock, and sat on my floor with the notice in my lap like a death certificate. My phone buzzed again. Good catch. You saw the watermark. Then. That means you're teachable. Then teachable subjects get premium attention. At 1:159 p.m., 1 minute before their countdown expired, my door handle jiggled, once slow and deliberate, and my hallway camera feed on a device I had powered off popped open and showed a man standing outside my door, holding a folder like a delivery clipboard. He looked normal. He looked like every person who has ever asked you to sign for something. He turned his head slightly toward the camera, and even though the image was grainy, I could see he was smiling. The feed froze. A message appeared over the frozen frame like a caption on a live stream. Bids open. Then the lights in my apartment dimmed to that bruise color again, my thermostat dropped 5 degrees, and my phone buzzed with the last line of the night, calm as a receipt. Protection declined. Entertainment approved. The next offer didn't come as a threat. It came as a solution, which is how the dark web really gets you, by letting you believe you're choosing safety instead of surrender. The message arrived at 7:06 a.m., right when the sky outside was grey and honest, and my body felt like it had been vibrating all night. You need a cleaner, it said. No greeting, no branding, just that line like a doctor stating a diagnosis. I stared at it, half expecting the next message to be a joke about dead bodies or bleach. Instead, the second line was clinical. We remove traces, digital and physical. We make it like it didn't happen. My throat tightened because that was exactly what I wanted. Not revenge, not justice. Erasure. The fantasy of waking up and finding my life returned to the version that existed before curiosity became a leash. A link followed. I didn't click it. I shouldn't have. But the words make it like it didn't happen, are a drug to someone who's been living in constant proof. I opened Tor on a throwaway machine at a friend's place because I couldn't bear to do it in my apartment again, and I typed the address by hand. The page was bare, almost elegant. The cleaner service. Beneath it, a short list of promises. Remove recordings. Remove listings. Remove leverage. Remove you from the database. Then in smaller text that made my skin crawl. If necessary, remove your previous version. That last line felt like a joke, until I noticed the payment section didn't list prices. It listed requirements. Item 1. Proof of consent. Item 2. A token. Item 3. A memory you can lose. My stomach turned. Consent. Token. Memory. It read like poetry written by someone who thinks they're clever. I closed the page and tried to forget it. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a photo of my apartment building lobby. Under it, we already know where to clean. The next message was softer, almost sympathetic. You're tired. Let us finish the job. I ignored it for a day. I tried to act normal. I even went back to the police station and asked for an update, because part of me still believed institutions exist for a reason. The officer looked at me with the kind of polite emptiness people use when they don't want to say we can't do anything. He told me evidence was being processed, that cyber investigations take time, that I should be careful online. Careful online. I nodded like a good citizen and walked out into sunlight that suddenly felt insulting. That night, when I opened my apartment door, the air inside smelled different. Not bad. Clean. Like disinfectant and laundry detergent. My stomach dropped because I hadn't cleaned. I stepped inside slowly, and the first thing I noticed was the absence of clutter. My shoes were lined up perfectly. My mail pile was gone. The blanket I'd been sleeping under on the couch was folded into a neat square. My kitchen counters were empty except for a single glass placed upside down like a staged photo. For a second I felt relief so strong it made me dizzy, like maybe a friend had come over, like maybe I'd finally gotten help. Then I noticed the second thing: my cameras were gone. Not unplugged. Gone. The little hallway cam on my shelf, the one I'd been checking like an addict, wasn't there. The adhesive mount was still on the wall, but the device had been removed so cleanly it looked like it had never existed. I walked to my desk and opened my laptop. The desktop was empty. Not because files were deleted, because the drive was new, factory new. No icons, no folders, no history. I opened my browser, and the bookmarks were wiped. The passwords were gone. Even the wallpaper had reverted to the default. It was like someone had replaced my digital life the way a hotel replaces sheets. Fresh, anonymous, impersonal. My phone buzzed with a message that felt like a whisper in a quiet room. Cleaning started. I backed away from the desk and looked around again. My framed photos were gone too. Not smashed. Not stolen in a messy way. Just removed. The nail holes on the wall had been patched with fresh paint. Whoever did this hadn't broken in like a criminal. They had entered like a service. Like a contractor finishing a job. My stomach rolled as I realized the cleaner wasn't offering to erase the dark web from my life. They were offering to erase my life from itself. My phone buzzed again. We took your leverage. Then we also took theirs. I should have felt safer. Instead, I felt hollow because I couldn't tell which side had been cleaned. I ran to the bathroom cabinet where I kept the evidence pouch, copy number, the extra screenshots I'd printed, the little physical proof that I hadn't imagined it. The cabinet was empty. The shelf was wiped. Even the dust patterns were gone, like someone had damp-clothed the inside. On the mirror, stuck with a neat piece of tape, was a small card with 2 words printed in plain font. You're welcome. I yanked it down, hand shaking, and on the back was the same onion watermark. That's when I heard a sound from my bedroom, soft, like fabric, moving. I froze. I stepped toward the doorway and saw my closet door slightly open. I hadn't left it open. The gap was just wide enough to be a suggestion. I reached for the handle, pulled it, and found my closet rearranged, with the precision of someone who had studied my habits. Work shirts on one side, casual on the other, shoes lined by color, with the drawer where I'd hidden the fake ID now empty. The bills stacked, and in the center hanging alone was a hoodie that wasn't mine. Black, plain, with no logo. The kind of hoodie you see in thumbnails. Tucked into its pocket was another card, uniform provided. My phone buzzed. We cleaned your identity. Then, now you match the story. Panic hit me in waves. I ran to my front door and checked locks. They were locked. I checked the peephole. Empty hallway. I opened the building portal on my phone to view the lobby cam, and my tenant login didn't work. Wrong password. I tried reset. The system said the email associated with the account didn't exist. My hands went numb. I opened my email app and found my inbox empty. Not deleted, not archived, simply not linked, like the account had never been created. Then a new email appeared, in the app anyway, from a blank sender subject line, clean receipt. The body contained 3 lines. Service completed. Traces removed. Subject simplified. Attached was a single photo, me sleeping on my couch, the familiar angle from above. Only this time, the living room in the photo wasn't mine. The couch was different. The lamp was different. The walls were a different shade. I stared at it until the room around me felt unstable, like my own apartment could be swapped out while I blinked. My phone buzzed. We relocated your footage. Then, if you want your old life back, you pay. I swallowed hard, because finally there it was. Money. A transaction, I understood. And then the next message arrived, and money became the least of it. Payment is consent. Beneath that, say it. Please, remove me. My breath caught because I recognized the pattern from the ransom note. Confession as training. They didn't want cash. They wanted me to practice surrender in my own voice. I didn't reply. I refused to give them that sound. The lights in my apartment flickered once, just a blink, and in that blink I saw the hoodie in my closet sway slightly, as if someone had brushed past it. When the light steadied, the hoodie was still, but the closet door was closed again. My phone buzzed one last time. Calm as a service. Confirmation. You asked for cleaning. Cleaning removes evidence. Without evidence, you are lighter, easier to move. I sat on my floor in an apartment that looked like mine and didn't feel like mine, surrounded by the clean absence of proof, and I realized the clean as real product wasn't erasure. It was doubt, because now if I tried to tell anyone, I wouldn't have screenshots, files, logs, devices, or even a trail of accounts to show I'd been hunted. I would only have my voice, and they had already shown me they could use my voice better than I could. I should have learned by then that the dark web doesn't punish you for clicking it, rewards you for watching, because watching is the cleanest kind of participation. The link showed up at 1047 p.m. On a phone I'd sworn was clean, a plain notification with no app icon and no sender name, just a line of text that looked like it had been written directly onto my lock screen. Live now. Don't look away. Under it was a URL that wasn't even trying to be human readable, a string of characters that felt like a cold address in a city that doesn't exist. I didn't want to open it. I'd already watched myself become content once with the window test with the forum chat, cheering when my body did what it was trained to do. I'd already felt what it's like to have an audience tugging at your instincts. But the hook they used this time wasn't curiosity. It was fear of absence. The next notification arrived 10 seconds later, a thumbnail image, dark, grainy, tinted red, like a night vision camera with the color balance broken. In the corner was the warped onion watermark. In the center was a door that looked exactly like mine, down to the scuff near the hinge and the thin line of black tape on the frame. My stomach dropped hard enough to make me dizzy. Then the caption on the thumbnail loaded, and my throat tightened. Room 13. Subject present. I told myself it could be a fake set, a staged hallway made to look like my building, a cheap psychological trick, but my body didn't negotiate with logic anymore. It reacted like an animal hearing its own name. I opened the link. The page loaded instantly, no buffering, no warning screen, no consent banner, as if it had already been open and waiting behind my eyes. A video window filled the screen. At the bottom was a chat that moved faster than I could read. At the top, a title in clean font, Live Stream Door Test. There was a donation panel on the right, with neat buttons labeled like tips, lights off, door handle, blinds up, speaker voice, radio static, and one final option, grayed out like a joke you weren't allowed to click untree. I stared at those buttons and felt something in me go hollow, because it wasn't a red room in the sensational horror sense, not at first. It was worse. It was a control room. The camera view showed my hallway, the real one. Same flickering fluorescent, same ugly carpet, same fire extinguisher case with a crack in the plastic. The angle was slightly above eye level, as if the camera were mounted where building cameras usually are. But my building management had laughed at me when I asked about footage like the cameras were decorative. Now, I was watching my own door from the outside, and I wasn't the operator. The chat screamed in bursts. I could barely track. He's here, run door. Test make him check. P4, do the clicking pay for lights. Someone posted my unit number, like it was a sports jersey. Another user posted, reactive sleeper, good subject, like my fear was a product review. My fingers hovered over the close button. I should have closed it. I didn't, because my brain still believed that seeing equals understanding, and understanding equals control. The first donation hit with a soft chime. The label lit up door handle. In the video, my doorknob moved, one slow jiggle, deliberate, patient, and the exact test that had been used to train my body. At the same instant, inside my apartment, my real doorknob moved with the same single controlled jiggle, and the chain latched tight with a tiny metallic squeal. My heart slammed against my ribs. The chat exploded with laughing reactions. Another chime. Lights off. My living room lights snapped off so cleanly it felt like a cut in a movie. The only illumination left was the streetlight spill. Through the blinds, a pale stripe across the floor. A third chime. Speaker voice. From somewhere in my apartment, a place I couldn't locate because sound becomes dishonest when you're scared. A calm voice said conversationally, "Don't be shy." They paid. I stepped backward until my calves hit the couch. My phone buzzed even though the stream was already open, and the message was a single line that made my skin crawl. "Look at the chat. You're trending." I looked back down. Someone had posted a cropped photo of me in my living room, taken from above live, updated, my face angled toward the door, eyes wide, posture rigid. The caption beneath it, subject responding. I didn't own any camera that could take that angle. I had checked the ceiling corners until my neck hurt. I had torn down vents, replaced detectors, unplugged devices, and still this camera existed. The chat began to chant in a way that felt childish and violent without being explicit. Blinds up. Blinds up. Another chime. Blinds up. The motor in my blinds whined and the slats tilted, exposing my living room to the street like a stage again, turning me into a silhouette for anyone outside. I rushed to the window and yanked at the cord by hand. The motor resisted, grinding softly like it was fighting my grip. The blinds trembled, then froze halfway. The voice, that calm, customer service voice, said, "Manual is cute." Then it added, and the word choice felt deliberate, "But this is life." I grabbed my phone and tried to call 911. The call screen came up. I hit dial. The phone didn't ring. Instead, a new window opened over my call screen, a playback bar and a waveform. My own voice began to speak through my phone speaker, reading a sentence I had never recorded in my cadence, with my little breath before the hard words. I looked, and I helped. The stream chat went wild. "He's calling, play the memo. Do the static make him drop it?" Another donation chime. Radio static. My speakers, unplugged, boxed, dead by all logic, filled the room with a low hiss, like a radio between stations. Beneath the hiss was that faint rhythmic clicking I'd learned to dread, as if someone were tapping plastic with a fingernail, slow and patient, enjoying the pace. My phone buzzed again. No cops. They ruined the show. I stumbled toward the door, then stopped because my body had learned the script. Door equals cue equals audience. The chat reacted anyway because I'd moved. A user typed, "He's fighting it," as if my resistance were an extra feature they'd unlocked. The donation panel flashed, and for the first time, the grayed out option, Untry, flickered from gray to pale yellow like a button, becoming available. The chat began to spam Untry so fast it blurred. I felt bile rise in my throat. I backed away from the door, palms out, whispering to myself like a prayer. Don't move, don't perform, don't feed it. The voice in the room sighed, almost disappointed. They're impatient tonight, it said. Give them something small. My phone buzzed with a new message that made my hands shake. Wave at the window again and we keep entry locked. My stomach turned because it was a bargain in the language they liked obedience for safety. The blinds were still half open. Outside, a car slowed at the curb. I saw the driver's face turn curious, catching the weird, bright rectangle of my apartment. I didn't wave. I stood very still, refusing to be the obedient subject. The chat filled with angry comments. Someone donated again. Door handle. My doorknob jiggled twice, this time tap-tap like impatience, and then the chain pulled tight again as the door pressed outward a fraction of an inch and stopped. The voice laughed softly. See, it said, you don't have to wave. The Untry button flashed yellow again. The chat screamed. My phone vibrated with the last message that finally made me understand what they were selling. Whether you obey or refuse, you move. Movement is content. The stream froze on a frame of my door, and a caption appeared across the video window in clean white letters, "Viewer verified." The chat vanished. The donation panel disappeared. The screen went black, except for the warped onion watermark, pulsing once like a heartbeat. Then in the darkness of my living room, my blinds lowered by themselves, as if the show had ended and someone was drawing the curtain. The lights came back on. The doorknob stopped moving. Everything reset into normal, and that normality was the cruelest part, because it made my mind ask the question they wanted it to ask. If this was only a stream, why did my house obey it? My phone buzzed one final time, soft and simple, like a notification from a calendar app. Tomorrow we stream the inside. The next day, the first message wasn't a threat, it was an invoice. It arrived at 809A. While I was staring at my own front door like it might speak, a plain text notification appeared. Payment due. Under it, a Bitcoin address and one line of explanation that made my stomach drop Bitcoin for blood. I didn't understand what that meant at first, because my brain tried to translate it into something harmless, fake, edgy wording, a themed marketplace, listing a horror gimmick. Then a second message arrived, with a detail that snapped me out of denial. Type O negative. That's rare. That's valuable. My mouth went dry. I'd donated blood once in college, and my blood type had been written on a little card I'd forgotten in a drawer. I had never posted it online. I had never told anyone who didn't need to know. The message continued clinical and calm. We don't need a donation. We need proof you'll pay in the currency we choose. My hands trembled as I set my phone down because I could feel the trap forming. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about blood. It was about demonstrating obedience to a request that feels morally wrong even when it's only symbolic. The next ping came from my laptop, even though I hadn't opened Tor. A browser window popped up on its own and loaded a page with the warped onion watermark in the corner, styled like a charity site, but too clean, too minimal, like it wanted to look legitimate. At the top was a counter labeled Blood Fund. Below it, a scrolling list of transactions, tiny Bitcoin amounts, each line paired with a word, drop cut VET. The words were obscene in their suggestion, without ever being explicit. Under the list was a live chat. It moved slower than the forum chat had, and that made it more intimate, like a room full of people whispering instead of shouting. New subject, someone typed. Oneg another asked. A third. Make him pay. I tried to close the window. It reopened. I tried to shut the laptop. The screen stayed on under the closed lid, glowing faintly like an eye behind a half-closed lid. My phone buzzed again. Don't panic. It's just a fundraiser. Then, as if enjoying the joke, the next line, "Your blood is trending." I stood up and felt the room tilt, because the word trending has no place near something like blood unless your life has been turned into content. Another message arrived, softer, almost soothing, small amount. Nothing painful. We just want your consent. There it was again, the real product hidden inside every demand. Consent. Confession. Training. I went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face, like I could shock myself awake. When I looked up, the mirror had a new strip of black tape on the corner, and written on it in neat white ink were 3 words that made my skin crawl. Donna. Today. I ripped it off, and my phone buzzed instantly. Careful. You'll leave prints. Then, we already have yours. My hands shook so hard I had to sit down on the bathroom floor, because the implication wasn't that someone would break in with a syringe like a movie villain. The implication was that they didn't need anything dramatic. They already had records. They already had access. They already had my files, my photos, my schedule, my habits. Blood was just the next word they were using to make me feel owned at a deeper, more physical level. I went back to the laptop and forced myself to look at the page like a detective, not a victim. There was a section labeled Proof, and under it were blurred thumbnails of documents, a lab report, a donor card, a screenshot of a health app. Then the page refreshed, and one thumbnail unblurred for a second, just long enough for me to read my name on a medical form I'd signed years ago. I slammed my fist on the desk. My phone buzzed. See? We can verify. Then, now you verify. A timer appeared on the page, counting down from 10 minutes, and the chat began to post the same word over and over, like a chant, pay. My chest tightened because I recognized the pattern. A countdown isn't a deadline. It's a way to make your body rush, to make you act before you think. I opened my banking app out of pure reflex, which is exactly what they wanted, and then I stopped because I realized how quickly my fingers had moved toward obedience. I set the phone down like it was hot. I said out loud to the empty room, "No." My voice sounded small, which made me angry. The laptop speakers crackled, and the calm voice returned, the one that sounded like customer support with a smile. "We're not asking for much," it said. "Just a tip." It chuckled softly. "Blood for Bitcoin. It's poetic." I didn't answer. The voice continued. "If you don't pay, we don't hurt you," it said, and I hated how it phrased that as a favor. "We hurt your story. We release your donor data. We attach it to your face. We make you a poster." The page refreshed, and beneath the timer, a new panel appeared, labeled Preview Drop. I watched in horror as a blurred image resolved into a photo of me standing at a blood drive in college arm, extended, smiling, because I thought I was doing something good. I hadn't seen that picture in years. I didn't even know where it was stored. The caption beneath it read, "Good person. Good product." My stomach twisted. The chat reacted with laughter. Someone typed, "Make him pay double." The timer hit 1 minute. My phone buzzed with a final instruction. "Send something. Anything. Prove you belong." I didn't. The timer hit 0. Nothing exploded. No sirens. No masked men. Instead, my apartment printer unplugged unused Word and spit out a single page. In the center, in plain black text, was a clean receipt layout with my name at the top and a line item, "Donation declined." Under that, "Alternate payment." Selected. My mouth went dry. My laptop screen changed, and the charity-like page vanished, replaced by a simple video window labeled Live. The camera angle was inside a sterile room, white walls, bright light, a metal table. No gore, no screaming, nothing sensational. Just the cold feeling of a place that wants to be interpreted as medical. A person in gloves moved into frame and placed a small vial on the table. The vial was sealed, labeled with a barcode, and beneath the barcode was a typed line, my blood type. O negative. My heart hammered as the gloved hand tapped the vial, gently the same rhythm as the clicking sound I'd heard for weeks, as if even the gesture was a signature. The voice returned, soft and pleased. "See," it said, "we can deliver blood without touching you." My phone buzzed one last time. "You didn't pay with Bitcoin." so we paid with your data. The video feed cut to a close-up of the label, and for a split second I saw a second line under the blood type, my building address. Then the screen went black, and the warped onion watermark pulsed once, like a heartbeat. I sat there trembling, because whether the vial was real or staged didn't matter anymore. The point wasn't the substance inside it. The point was the sentence they'd written across my life: we can turn your body into information and information into a delivery. That evening, when I opened my mailbox, there was a small padded envelope waiting for me like a normal package. Inside was a plastic sleeve with a red-tinted, liquid-filled vial, maybe real, maybe not, sealed and labeled with the same barcode style from the stream. No note, no threat, just the object and the knowledge that my boundary had been crossed, again this time in a way that made my skin feel too thin. My phone buzzed as I stood there in the mailroom, frozen, and the message was simple, calm, and final. Thank you for donating to the story. I didn't find the Cannibal chat room by searching for it, and that's what still wakes me up sometimes. The idea that the worst rooms aren't hidden behind effort, they're pushed to you once you've proven you'll click. It appeared the morning after the blood vial showed up in my mailbox, a plain notification on my lock screen, with no sender and no app icon, like a thought someone injected into my day. You keep choosing polite horror. Try hunger. Under it was a link and a single warning that felt like a dare. No screenshots, no backups. I stared at it while my coffee went cold, telling myself I wouldn't open it, telling myself I'd finally learned. Then another message arrived that made the decision for my body before my mind could. We saw you stare at the vial for 37 seconds. That number was too specific to be a guess. I opened the link. The page loaded clean, minimal, almost tasteful, like it wanted to look like a private club rather than a crime scene. A black background, white text, a small warped onion watermark tucked into the corner like a signature. At the top, one line: Cannibal, chat, rollerplay only. Under it, a second line in smaller font: we do not harm, we discuss desire. That should have been the end of it, the point where you close the tab and breathe. But the dark web's most effective disguise is plausible deniability. Roleplay only. Discuss desire. It was the kind of language that lets people pretend they're consuming fiction while the room quietly measures who flinches and who leans in. A login prompt appeared without asking for a password, only a token, and beneath it was a field labeled "Prove you belong." I didn't type anything. My phone buzzed. You already proved you belong. You watched the wallet listing. You watched the drop. You watched yourself. The login field filled itself with a string of characters I hadn't typed, and the page slid open like a door that recognized my face. The chat room was smaller than I expected, not a chaotic scroll, more like a slow, intimate dinner conversation where everyone pretends their manners are normal. Usernames were bland: knife and fork, Sunday dinner, salt hollow table for two. The messages weren't graphic. That was the sick genius of it. They spoke in euphemisms, recipes, metaphors, the kind of coded language that makes your brain do the dirty work of imagining the worst. I like the anticipation, someone wrote. I like the part where they realized the rules changed. Another replied. A third, consent is seasoning. My stomach clenched at that line because it matched the pattern I'd been living inside: consent as product, confession as training. Then a new message appeared in the chat, highlighted at the top as if it were pinned. Tonight's tasting, case 11. Case 11. Me. I felt my pulse in my throat. I tried to close the tab, and my cursor drifted away from the X like it was magnetized. My phone buzzed. Don't be rude. Say hello. In the chat, a new username joined, with a soft system ping, reactive sleeper. I hadn't created it. It was me, anyway. A name built from the description they'd used on the forum. The room reacted. He's here, someone typed. Welcome, sweet, another said. Tell us what you tasted. Someone else wrote, and I realized they weren't asking about food. They were asking about participation, what I'd consumed, what I'd helped sell. A private message window opened on the side, and the sender was simply host. The message was short. You don't have to do anything. Just read. That's enough. The last 2 words made my skin crawl because that's exactly what the dark web had been training me to believe watching is harmless. The host sent another message. We're not monsters. We're honest. Hunger exists. We name it. Then, you should appreciate honesty. I stared at the screen until the letters felt like they were pressed into my eyes. I wanted to be sick, but my body was too keyed up to release anything. In the chat, someone posted a list labeled menu, and under it were items written like a restaurant special, each one a euphemism that pointed at a kind of violence without describing it. The listener, the witness, the cleaner, the donor. Each one felt like a callback to the episodes of my own nightmare. When I saw the witness, my stomach tightened, because that was what I'd become, the person who looked. The chat moved slowly, almost ceremonially. Do we have consent? Someone asked. Consent is overrated, another replied. The host intervened. We prefer consent. It improves the taste. Then, as if to demonstrate the room's rules, the host typed, "Let the subject speak." My username, Reactive Sleeper, blinked, like the cursor was waiting for me. My phone buzzed with a single instruction. Type, "I understand." I didn't. I held my hands away from the keyboard, as if distance could be defiance. The chat waited. The silence in the room felt like a spotlight. Someone typed, "He's refusing." Another refusal is also a flavor. The host DM'd again. "You're safe. This is only words." Then my laptop speakers clicked, and that faint, rhythmic tapping began, the fingernail on plastic sound that had followed me since the first mystery box. The tapping synced with my heartbeat for a moment, and I realized the room wasn't only words. My phone buzzed. "Look at your kitchen." I lifted my eyes from the screen and saw something on my counter that hadn't been there earlier. A small cutting board, clean wood, placed perfectly parallel to the edge of the counter, like a staged prop. On top of it lay a single kitchen knife, my knife laid out like a suggestion. I hadn't taken it out. My breath hitched. I walked to the counter slowly, like approaching a snake, and my phone buzzed again. "Relax. Everyone has knives." The host typed in the chat, "He's standing." Good. Someone posted a donation emoji. Another, "Ask him to show his hands." My phone buzzed. "Hold the knife. Just hold it. Proof." And there it was again. Proof of consent. Proof of participation. Not crime. Not gore. A simple act that could be framed however they wanted. I didn't touch it. I backed away until my hips hit the counter behind me. In the chat, someone typed, "He's scared of himself." Another replied, "That's the best part." The host DM'd, "Don't be dramatic. We're discussing appetite." Then, with a calm cruelty that felt rehearsed, the host added, "You already cut yourself open when you clicked." My phone buzzed and my camera app opened by itself, front-facing, showing my own face, pale and rigid. A filter I'd never selected was applied, tinting the image, slightly red like the stream lighting, and a caption appeared at the bottom of the preview. Subject ready. I slapped the phone out of my hand. It hit the floor. The chat reacted instantly, as if my motion had been detected and broadcast. He dropped it. He's resisting. Make him pick it up. The host typed, "We don't force. We cue." Then the lights in my kitchen dimmed by themselves to that bruise color again, and my smart speaker, still unplugged, still supposed to be dead, spoke softly from somewhere I couldn't locate. "Pick it up." I didn't. I stood very still, breathing through my mouth like I was trying not to inhale the room. The tapping sound returned closer now, not from the speakers, but from inside the walls, as if the building itself had started to participate. I wanted to run outside, but I remembered the live drop movement is content. The host DM'd again, tone shifting to something almost tender. "We're not asking for blood. We're asking for your voice." My phone buzzed on the floor. Screen cracked but lit, and the message was a sentence I recognized from earlier demands. "Say it. Please remove me." Then it changed. The words rearranged themselves into something worse, something that made my skin crawl in a deeper, more personal way. "Say it. I am hungry." I didn't say it. I didn't type it. I didn't even think it, on purpose. The chat began to spam one word. Hungry. The host typed, "We can wait." Then the final message arrived, and it wasn't euphemism, it wasn't poetry. It was the most practical, cruel sentence they had used on me yet. If you don't speak, we'll post your kitchen video as consent denied. People pay more for denial. My throat closed because I understood the trap. If I obeyed it was proof. If I refused, it was also proof, framed as performance. Either way, I was content. I walked to the kitchen counter, not to pick up the knife, but to turn the overhead light on manually, to flood the room with brightness, as if I could burn the mood away. The switch did nothing. The room stayed dim. The chat exploded with praise, like I'd done something dramatic. He's choosing mood. He's staging. The host typed, "You're learning." Then, a new system message appeared at the top of the chat, in clean font. Session recorded. Beneath it, "Thank you for your taste." My screen went black. The warped onion watermark pulsed once like a heartbeat. My kitchen lights snapped back to normal. The knife was gone from the counter. The cutting board was gone too, leaving only a clean rectangle where it had sat as if someone had lifted the props away after the scene. I stood in my bright, ordinary kitchen, shaking, and I realized the Cannibal chat room hadn't been about gore at all. It had been about appetite for control, appetite for watching someone become afraid of their own hands. My phone, face down on the floor, buzzed one last time with a message that made my stomach drop. "Tomorrow we feed you outside." They didn't tell me to meet anyone. They told me to pick something up, which is how you make a person feel like they're still in control. No face-to-face, no confrontation, just a task. The message arrived at 6:32 p.m., just as the sky outside my window started to go dim and the streetlights came on like a slow warning. "Dead drop," it said. 2 words, no explanation. Then a set of coordinates and a time 8:15 p.m. Under it, a line that felt like it belonged in a customer service script. "Bring gloves. Don't bring your phone." My first reaction was anger so sharp, it felt clean. Dead drop is old language. For old crimes, leave something, pick something up, no contact, no witnesses. It was the kind of thing spies do in movies, and the idea that my life had become cinematic made me want to scream. I told myself I wouldn't go. Then the next message arrived, and with it the familiar tightening in my chest. "If you don't pick it up, we deliver it to your neighbors." A third message followed, polite and specific. "We'll label it with your unit number." You like labels. I stared at that line and felt my body begin to move, before my mind agreed. Because humiliation is a lever that works faster than fear. I left my phone on the kitchen table like they asked, which felt like cutting off a limb, and I put on a hoodie that wasn't mine. The black one. The cleaner had left in my closet like a uniform, because part of me wanted to see if refusing the asked story even mattered anymore. I took a pair of disposable gloves from a box under my sink and walked out into the hallway with my hands already sweating inside the plastic. The building smelled like detergent and someone's dinner. Normal. Insultingly normal. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, because the elevator had become one more smart system I didn't trust. Outside, the air was cold enough to sharpen everything. The coordinates led to a small park, less than a mile away. The same park that had appeared in that earlier receipt file, the one I hadn't gone to because staying home felt like safety. As I walked, I kept expecting a car to slow beside me, a figure to step out to confrontation. Nothing happened. That absence was its own kind of pressure, like the world holding its breath for a punchline. The park was mostly empty at night, just a few dog walkers and a couple sitting too close together on a bench, their laughter thin in the cold air. The coordinates led me to a row of bushes near a playground, the kind of place kids hide candy wrappers and lost toys. I stood there feeling ridiculous, like the most paranoid person in the world, and then I noticed it, a small piece of black tape on the underside of a park sign, the same tape they'd used to mark my doorframe. On it, in neat white ink, was one arrow pointing down. My throat tightened. I crouched and looked under the signpost base and saw a metal utility box, one of those dull green ones cities use for cables, its latch slightly scuffed as if it had been opened recently. There was no lock, just a simple latch. That was the point. The dead drop doesn't need to be hidden if no one knows to look. My hands shook as I lifted the latch. Inside was a small zippered pouch, black nylon, clean like it had been purchased for this purpose. No blood, no gore, nothing cinematic, just a bag, because the most effective horror is mundane. I pulled it out and zipped it open a few inches. Inside was a USB drive, plain, cheap, and attached to it with a twist tie was a small paper tag with my name printed in clean block letters like a luggage label. I wanted to throw it into the bushes and walk away. Instead, I felt that old it reflex, the urge to understand what a drive contains rise up like a habit they've trained. I shoved the pouch into my pocket and closed the utility box. As I stood, I heard a soft click behind me, like a phone camera focusing. I turned fast. A man stood a few yards away near the path, holding a phone down at his side like he'd just finished taking a photo. He wasn't wearing a mask. He wasn't threatening. He looked like every tired person on an evening walk. Dark jacket, hands pale in a street light, face neutral. When my eyes met his, he lifted his phone slightly, not to threaten, but to show me the screen. On it was a live view of me standing by the signpost, hoodie up, pouch in my pocket, posture rigid. In the corner of his screen I saw the warped onion watermark. My stomach dropped. He didn't speak. He just nodded once, a small polite gesture like a delivery person, confirming receipt. Then he turned and walked away at a normal pace, disappearing behind the trees. I stood frozen, because the normal pace was the most terrifying part. No urgency, no fear of being caught, as if being seen was the whole objective. I walked home fast, head down, trying not to look like a person running from something invisible. When I reached my building lobby, the security camera above the mailboxes rotated slightly, tracking me with a smooth mechanical motion. My skin crawled. I took the stairs again. At my door, I found a fresh strip of black tape on the frame, higher than the others, with 2 words written in white ink: Good Walk. Inside my apartment, my phone was on the kitchen table, exactly where I'd left it, screen lit with a new message that made my chest tighten. You picked it up. Thank you. Then another, now you'll plug it in. I didn't reply. I sat on my couch, staring at the pouch in my pocket like it was a live animal. I told myself not to connect unknown USB devices, the basic rule of every security training ever. I told myself the rule exists for a reason. Then my laptop, factory clean, supposedly new, supposedly safe, chimed, and a new notification appeared on the screen without me touching it. Device detected. My blood ran cold. The laptop knew, which meant the laptop had been waiting, which meant the dead drop wasn't about delivering a USB drive. It was about delivering a moment of compliance. My phone buzzed again. We didn't need you to bring your phone. The park has cameras. Then, the man was optional. I swallowed hard and opened the pouch on my coffee table. The USB drive looked harmless, the kind you'd get at a conference with a logo printed on it. There was no logo, just a small etched number 16. Another episode title. I didn't plug it in. I put it back in the pouch and shoved it into a kitchen drawer, then sat very still, waiting for the punishment. The punishment came as kindness. My phone buzzed. Good. You resisted. Then immediately, the other half of the trap. We'll plug it in for you. My laptop screen flashed. A folder appeared on the desktop, named DED Drop. Inside was a single video file. I didn't download it. It was simply there. I opened it because resisting is hard, and curiosity is a leash that tightens when you pull away. The video showed the park from above, a wide angle from a pole-mounted camera I'd never noticed. It showed me arriving, opening the utility box, taking the pouch. It showed the man with the phone standing at a distance, filming like a witness. Then the camera view cut to something worse. A second angle from behind a tree, lower, closer, framing my hands as I opened the pouch. The cut was too smooth, too intentional, like a director switching cameras during a live show. A caption appeared over the footage in clean white letters, subject follows coordinates. The video ended on a still frame of my face turning toward the man, eyes wide, and beneath it the same sentence that had become their favorite receipt. Payment is behavior. My phone buzzed one last time for the night, with a line that made my stomach drop into my shoes. Tomorrow we use the dead drop to bring you something that breathes. When they told me, tomorrow we use the dead drop to bring you something that breathes, my mind went straight to the worst kind of cinematic horror, because that's what fear does when it has nothing solid to hold. I imagined a living thing in a box, a person in a trunk, an animal in a bag, some proof that the dark web wasn't just watching me, but practicing on me. I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room with the lights on, listening to the building settle, staring at my door like it might open itself in one clean, edited second. Morning came like a lie, bright and ordinary, and for the first time in weeks, I forced myself to leave my apartment with no destination, just movement that wasn't on their schedule. I walked until my legs hurt, until the city started to feel like it belonged to other people again. That's how I ended up at the public library, not because I love books, but because libraries still carry the illusion of safety, quiet rules, cameras that feel like they exist for the public good instead of private entertainment. I thought maybe I could hide inside normal. I walked in under fluorescent lights that felt too honest, nodded at the security guard, who barely looked up, and chose a seat where I could see the entrance. I didn't bring my laptop. I didn't bring my phone. I brought a notebook and a pen, like it was 1,999, and my life couldn't be edited through paper. I sat there pretending to read a magazine while my eyes scanned faces the way prey scans a field. Nothing happened for an hour. The silence started to feel like mercy. Then a librarian rolled a cart past me, and one of the books on the top shelf shifted just slightly, as if it had been placed crooked on purpose. I noticed it the way you notice a typo. Small, stupid, but impossible to unsee once you see it. The book was plain, the kind of worn paperback with a generic cover that looks like it survived 1,000 bored hands. On its spine, near the bottom, someone had stuck a tiny strip of black tape. I didn't need to touch it to know what it would be. I felt my pulse in my throat as the cart moved on. I waited until the librarian turned the corner. Then I stood and walked to the shelf like I was just browsing. The tape had 2 words written in thin white ink. Check, M.E. My stomach dropped. Libraries have rules about not defacing books, about respect, about quiet, and somehow the fact that they'd broken that rule made it feel more invasive than any threat. I slid the book off the shelf and opened it in the aisle. The pages looked normal until I hit the middle and felt resistance. The spine had been altered. Someone had cut a hollow into the center of the book, a clean rectangular cavity hidden behind intact outer pages, the kind of thing you see in spy kits and cheap magic tricks. Inside the hollow sat a USB drive in a small plastic sleeve tucked in like it belonged there. The drive was plain cheap, with an etched number on the metal, 17. I stood there, holding the book, the library air suddenly too warm, and I heard something that made my skin crawl before my brain could explain it. Breathing. Soft, steady, close, as if someone were exhaling inches from my ear. I froze. I looked around. No one was close enough. The breathing continued, faint, rhythmic, like audio leaking from a tiny speaker. I tilted the book, and the sound shifted slightly, like the source moved with it. My mouth went dry. The dead drop had brought me something that breathes, and it wasn't alive. It was worse. It was the sound of life packaged. I walked to a study table, sat with my back to a wall, and stared at the USB drive without touching it. I told myself to hand it to staff to call police to do anything responsible. But the longer I held the book, the more I felt the trap tighten. If I reported it, they'd say I planted it. If I kept it, they'd say I accepted it. If I ignored it, they'd say I performed anyway by looking. The breathing in the book continued patient, intimate, as if it was meant to sync with my own lungs. A child laughed somewhere in the building, bright and normal, and the contrast made my stomach twist. I slipped the USB drive back into its sleeve and carried the book to the circulation desk like a person checking out a normal item. The librarian smiled and asked if I'd like to borrow it. I said yes, because saying no felt like admitting fear. She scanned my library card, scanned the book, and the receipt printed with a due date 2 weeks away. The machine beeped softly, and as it did, the breathing in the book stopped. The silence felt like a blink. The librarian handed the book back and said, "Have a good day." I wanted to tell her what was inside, but my mouth wouldn't form the words, because how do you explain a horror that looks like stationery? I walked out of the library with a book tucked under my arm, like I'd just chosen to be normal, and the moment I stepped into sunlight, My pocket vibrated. I didn't have my phone. My pocket still vibrated. I stopped walking. The vibration stopped. I walked again. The vibration returned a low pulse, like a heartbeat. I understood then it wasn't my pocket. It was the book. The hollowed-out cavity held more than a USB drive. It held a small device, a tiny motor, something that could hum against paper and skin, a private cue. I quickened my pace, and the pulsing quickened too, as if the book were matching me. When I got home, I locked my door and set the book on my kitchen table like it was evidence. I opened it again, and the breathing sound returned instantly louder now in the quiet of my apartment, soft and wet, as if a person were asleep in the room with me. My hands shook as I reached into the hollow and pulled out the USB drive. The breathing didn't stop. That meant the USB wasn't the breathing at all. It was a separate layer, a prop and a trigger. I held the drive between two fingers like it could stain me, and I forced myself to do the one thing I knew I shouldn't. I connected it not to a personal device, but to the oldest, most stripped-down machine I had left. A cheap tablet used as a clock. The moment the drive touched the port, the tablet screen lit up, and a single file opened without asking. No folder. No menu. Just a video window, already playing. The video showed the library aisle I'd been standing in, the exact shelf, the exact cart, the exact moment the book shifted on the librarian's cart. Then the camera view zoomed slightly, and I saw myself step into frame, reaching for the book. My stomach turned, because the angle was from above, from a ceiling corner library security footage. The timestamp was today, accurate to the second. As the video played, a caption appeared across the bottom in clean white letters. Subject accepts lending. The video cut to the circulation desk, showing the librarian scanning the book and my library card. The caption updated, subject links identity. That's when I understood the real purpose of the library book. It wasn't to deliver a USB drive. It was to deliver a paper trail, a legitimate record that I had checked out the object. A neat little chain of accountability that could be turned against me whenever they wanted. The video ended on a close-up of the receipt printer, the due date visible, and beneath it another caption, return date flexible. My throat tightened. The tablet screen went black for a second, then a chat bubble appeared on top of the black screen like a message overlay. Good. Now we can place things in your name. I yanked the USB out, breathing hard, and the breathing sound from inside the book stopped again, as if it had been listening for my panic. My kitchen felt too quiet. I opened the book's hollow and found a new object beneath, where the USB had been, something that hadn't been there when I first opened it. A small laminated card with a QR code and one sentence printed beneath it. Solve to breathe. My lungs tightened. I didn't even know I'd been holding my breath, until that line made it feel like a rule. I set the book in a trash bag, taped the bag shut, and shoved it into the back of a closet. Like hiding it could erase the fact that my name was now attached to it in a government-funded building. In the silence, my apartment felt like it was waiting. Then, from somewhere deep in the walls, that faint, rhythmic clicking began again. Fingernail on plastic, slow and patient like applause after a quiet performance. My phone, which I hadn't touched in hours, lit up on the counter. One message appeared calm and pleased. Library footage is such clean content. Then another, the one that made my stomach drop into my shoes. Next, you solve the puzzle. If you don't, we post your breathing file as evidence. Oh, aye. I didn't want a puzzle. Puzzles are fun when the stakes are fictional, when the prize is bragging rights or a neat sense of closure. In my life, puzzles were just another way they turned my choices into receipts. Still, the laminated card from the library book sat on my kitchen counter like a dare, its QR code clean and glossy. The sentence beneath it simple and cruel, solve to breathe. That line wormed into my head the way a song does, repeating while I tried to make coffee, repeating while I tried to read, repeating while I tried to pretend I still owned my attention. The worst part was how much it resembled a famous internet myth, the kind people love to romanticize. Cicada, 3000-301, the old recruitment puzzle that made smart people feel special for decoding clues. Someone was copying that legend, because legends come with built-in denial. If I complained, they'd say it was an ARG. If I panicked, they'd call it performance. If I engaged, they'd call it consent. By midnight, the pressure had become physical. My chest felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with air and everything to do with control. I scanned the QR code. The page that loaded was stark white, background, black text, no logo except a faint, warped onion watermark tucked in the corner like a smirk. At the top it read, "Welcome subject." Under it, "This is a test." Then, as if to twist the knife, it added, "You love tests. You keep clicking." A timer sat beneath the text, counting down from 480002 days. Below the timer was the first clue, simple and smug: find the sound that isn't there. I stared at it, trying to decide whether to close the page and accept whatever breathing file threat they were holding. Then the page refreshed, and a second line appeared beneath the clue: check your library account. My stomach dropped. I logged into the library portal, except I couldn't. The system didn't recognize my password anymore, and the reset email never arrived. Then my phone buzzed and I nearly threw it. The message read, "We reset it for you." Another message followed with a one-time code. I used it because even my defiance had become predictable. The library portal opened, and my account showed a new hold ready for pickup. A book titled in plain text, "Breathing Exercises." The pickup location, a branch across town. The due date, tomorrow. My skin crawled because they were using a public institution like a stage prop. The puzzle wasn't just online. It was logistical. It demanded I move. Movement is content. I didn't go that night. I waited until morning, hoping daylight would make it feel less like a trap. At 9:1 a.m., another message arrived. Branch opens at 9. Don't be late. I went anyway because the timer in my head was louder than my pride. The branch was smaller than the downtown library, quieter, with fewer people and more blind corners. I walked to the hold shelf and found a paperback with a bright, cheerful cover. Breathing exercises, yoga poses, wellness nonsense. On the inside cover was a library stamp, and beneath it, a tiny strip of black tape. I peeled it carefully and found 2 words written in thin white ink: "Listen here." I flipped through the pages until I found one page dog-eared, as if by accident. Printed across the page in the margins so faint it almost looked like a smudge was a string of numbers. It wasn't a password. It was coordinates. My stomach sank. I left the library with the book under my arm, aware of the cameras, aware of my own posture, aware that even the act of walking like a normal person could be framed as performance. The coordinates led to a public art installation downtown, a sculpture made of metal panels that reflect the city in fractured pieces. Tourists take selfies there. Kids climb around it. It's the kind of place you don't suspect because it's too public. I arrived and scanned the panels until I noticed one that had been scratched just enough to form a symbol, an outline that looked like an insect. Simple and crude, but unmistakable if you'd ever seen the Cicada myth. Under it, etched in tiny letters, was a URL. I didn't type it into my phone. I wrote it on paper, like the old days, like paper could protect me. When I got home, I typed it into a browser on a spare machine. The page loaded, and my mouth went dry. It was a grid of small black and white images, each one a still frame from my life, my hallway, my couch, the library aisle, the park sign, the blood vial in my mailroom. The images were arranged like tiles in a puzzle, and when I hovered over them, they lit up in sequence, guiding my cursor like a hand guiding a child. At the top of the page, a sentence appeared: "You have 2 days to prove you're worth keeping." Under that, Cicada was recruitment. This is selection. The first puzzle was simple enough to be insulting: match tiles by timestamps, find the missing second, identify the cut. I solved it because they'd trained me to notice cuts the way you notice bruises on your own skin. When I clicked the correct sequence, the page responded with a calm, satisfied message: "Good, subject." Then, it unlocked the next clue, a short audio file labeled "breath." I hesitated. I clicked. The audio played a single sound, My own breathing recorded in close detail, the soft catch in my throat, the slight wheeze I get when I'm anxious. Under the audio player was a line of text. This is yours. We can post it as proof. Then to prove how much control they had, a new line appeared. Now hold your breath for 10 seconds. I didn't. My lungs tightened anyway, because the instruction had already landed in my nervous system like a command. The timer on the page began, counting down from 10. I sat there refusing, jaw clenched, and when the timer hit 0, the page didn't punish me with blood or violence. It punished me with humiliation. A new tile appeared in the grid, a still frame of me at my desk, lips pressed, shoulders tense, clearly holding my breath without meaning to. The caption beneath it, subject obeys, without touch. I felt sick. The next clue unlocked, find the copycat. Beneath it was a list of names, usernames, not real names, dozens of them. One was highlighted hollow. I recognized it from the Cannibal chat room. The page instructed message, hollow, I am ready. My throat closed. That wasn't a puzzle. That was recruitment language. The Cicada myth had always been about finding smart people. This copycat was about finding compliant people. I didn't send the message. I closed the browser. My phone buzzed immediately. Wrong move. You're skipping steps. Then, skipping steps is suspicious. A third message followed, polite and final. We'll complete the puzzle for you. My laptop screen woke by itself, and the browser reopened to the puzzle page, now showing a new tile at the center. A live camera feed from my apartment hallway, looking at my door from the outside. The feed wasn't from my device. It was from somewhere else, building infrastructure, some camera I didn't control. A caption appeared over the feed, final clue open. My stomach dropped. The door handle jiggled once, tapped slow and deliberate. The feed zoomed in on the people like an eye leaning close. My phone buzzed with a single instruction. Say, I am ready. And we stopped the door tests. I stood in my living room, shaking because the offer was exactly what my body wanted, relief in exchange for words. The puzzle page refreshed and displayed the timer again, now counting down from 00591 minute. The chat window on the page, filled with watchers, quieter than the live drop crowd, more focused, like people watching a test subject in a lab. He'll say it, someone typed. They always say it, another replied. I didn't say it. I didn't type it. I forced my mouth shut, like language itself was the trap. At 10 seconds left, the hallway feed froze, and a new image replaced it. A photo of my front door from inside my apartment, taken at eye level as if someone stood in my living room looking at it. That angle was impossible, unless someone had been inside. Across the photo in clean white letters was the final statement of the puzzle. You solved nothing. You only confirmed. You respond. The timer hit 0. The page displayed a simple completion banner. Selection complete. Then it added one line that felt like a verdict. Next challenge, meet us outside. I shut the laptop, breathing hard. My phone buzzed once more with the last message of the day, calm and pleased Cicada recruited minds. We recruit habits. Then, like a quiet knife, twist it added. Tomorrow you go somewhere public, and we see if you still think you're alone. They told me to meet them outside, and for a moment I almost laughed because it sounded like a schoolyard. Dare not a command from the same unseen hands that could freeze my hallway, feed and write captions over my life. Then the instructions started showing up everywhere. A plain notification with no sender. A single line on my thermostat display. A pop-up on my laptop that reopened itself after I closed it. Outside. Public. Prove you're alone. I tried to ignore it because ignoring had become my only form of prayer, but the silence around the command felt staged, like a room waiting for a cue. I didn't want to step into another live drop. I didn't want to give them movement. But I also didn't want the next edit to be physical, because they'd been hinting at that word for weeks, using it the way you use a knife on a table to remind someone it exists. I decided if I had to go outside, I would do it on my terms, in a place where I could blend in and borrow a machine I didn't own. An internet cafe. The kind that still exists in a forgotten strip mall, where the air smells like energy drinks and warm dust, where nobody asks your name as long as your cash is real. I told myself it was safer than my apartment, safer than my building's smart cameras and elevator logs, safer than any device tied to my accounts. I wore the black hoodie the cleaner left behind, not because I liked it, but because I needed to know whether their uniform was a joke or a signal. I left my phone at home like they always demanded, and for the first time in months I stepped outside without a screen in my hand, which should have felt freeing. It didn't. It felt like walking into a world without mirrors. The streets were normal pedestrians pretending not to see each other, cars rolling past with indifferent headlights, and I kept waiting for the normal to crack and reveal the audience. Halfway there, I noticed a new strip of black tape on the inside of my jacket cuff, placed where only I would see it, with 2 words in thin white ink. Good subject. My stomach tightened because it meant someone had touched my clothes without touching me, the kind of intimacy that feels like theft. The cafe sat between a payday loan place and a nail salon, a neon sign flickering like it was tired of pretending. Inside, the lights were too bright, and the chairs were sticky, and the counter guy barely looked up when I paid for an hour. I chose a computer at the back, where my screen wouldn't be visible to the whole room, and I kept my hands in my pockets for a full minute, just to prove to myself I didn't have to click. Then the monitor woke, with a desktop already open, and there pinned, like a shortcut, was an onion icon. Tor. I hadn't installed anything. I hadn't asked. The icon looked slightly warped, like someone had stretched it just enough to make it theirs. I felt my throat go dry. On the taskbar, a message balloon appeared without any program label. We brought it for you. The room around me stayed the same. Keyboard clacks a teen, laughing at a game, a printer coughing paper, yet the sentence made me feel like I'd just walked into a trap that had been set hours ago. I hovered the cursor over the onion icon without clicking it, and the moment the cursor touched it, the browser opened by itself. No splash screen, no warnings, no choice. A page loaded with the familiar faint watermark in the corner, and at the top in clean black text it read, Public Test Internet Cafe. Under that, Do you still think you're alone? A small, embedded video window played silently. It showed me entering the cafe from above, an angle that could only be a ceiling camera. It showed me paying cash. It showed me choosing the back computer. The timestamp matched real time. My skin crawled as the camera view switched to a closer angle from behind my shoulder, framing the hoodie, my hands, the glow of the monitor. That angle wasn't a ceiling camera. That angle was a person. I felt the hair on my arms lift. I didn't turn around right away because I was scared of the moment my eyes would confirm what my body already knew. The chat panel on the page began to fill, slower than the live drop, more deliberate, like a group of people settling in to watch a controlled experiment. He picked the back. He paid cash. He wore the uniform. Then a new line appeared, and it hit harder than any threat. He came voluntarily. My stomach twisted. I hadn't come voluntarily. I'd been herded. But the word was for the audience, not for me. It made my movement look like consent. My fingers trembled on the edge of the keyboard. I closed the browser. It reopened. I tried again. It reopened again, and this time the page refreshed, with a single sentence in the center, turn around. The chair behind me creaked softly, not as someone sat down, but as someone shifted weight nearby. I turned my head just enough to glance without fully committing, and I saw him, a man, at the next row of computers. Hood-up face, angled toward his screen, hands still, posture too calm. He wasn't staring directly at me. He didn't need to. On his monitor, reflected faintly in the glass of my own screen, I saw a live view of my back. In the corner of his view was that warped onion watermark. He wasn't hiding. He was verifying. My mouth went dry. I stood up and pushed my chair in, trying to move like a normal customer, leaving early. The man's hands didn't move. He didn't stand. He simply tilted his head a fraction, like a camera adjusting focus. My feet carried me toward the door, and as I walked, I felt that old, sick awareness return movement is content. The chat on my screen, which I could still see from the corner of my eye, erupted in short lines. He's leaving. Follow test. Do not run. My heart hammered as I stepped outside into the parking lot. The air felt colder than it had on the way in. I walked to the sidewalk and forced myself not to look back, not because I thought it made me invisible, but because I was terrified of the moment I would see him behind me and realize the outside world had become another corridor. My pace stayed steady for a full block. Then, in the reflection of a dark storefront window, I saw a second figure behind me at the same rhythm. The hood, the steady stride, the distance that never closed and never widened. He wasn't chasing. He was escorting. My stomach dropped as I understood why a chase is messy. An escort is proof. I turned a corner and slipped into a crowded convenience store, the kind with bright aisles and security mirrors. I walked to the back and pretended to look at snacks while my eyes tracked the door in the convex mirror. 30 seconds later, he entered, moved down an aisle, and stopped exactly where the mirror would catch him, as if he wanted the camera to record him being recorded. He didn't look at me. He looked up at the security camera and nodded once the same polite confirmation gesture the parkman had used like a delivery driver acknowledging receipt. My skin crawled. I left through the other exit and cut through an alley, forcing my lungs to stay quiet, forcing my feet not to break into a run. The follower stayed behind me, always just present enough to be undeniable. When I reached my building, the lobby camera rotated smoothly as I approached, and I watched the little lens track me like a pet. The elevator dinged at the exact moment I stepped inside the lobby as if it had been called already. I took the stairs again, 2 at a time, and I heard footsteps below me unhurried. When I reached my floor and turned the corner, he was there at the far end of the hallway, standing under the fluorescent light, with his hood up, hands relaxed, body angled, not toward me but toward the hallway, camera mount, like he knew exactly where the frame was. He lifted his phone slightly, and on the screen I saw my own hallway from a different angle, the angle that made my door look like a stage entrance. A line of text appeared over his video feed, large enough for me to read even at a distance. Follow, complete. He didn't step closer. He didn't threaten. He simply tapped his screen once, and every light in my hallway flickered a clean, synchronized blink like a cut between scenes. In that blink I saw the doorknob of my apartment jiggle once on its own, slow and deliberate, as if the building itself had learned the cue. The follower then turned and walked away the way he'd arrived at a normal pace, disappearing into the stairwell. No chase, no confrontation, just a completed test. I went inside my apartment, shaking hard, punching at my ribs, and found something waiting on my kitchen table. My new clean phone, the one I hadn't brought, turned face up with the screen lit. A single message sat on it. Good job. You proved public doesn't mean safe. Under the message was a photo taken from above my head in the cafe, the hoodie visible my hands on the keyboard, the onion icon glowing on the screen. Beneath the photo was one line that made my throat tighten. You will keep looking for a place where we aren't. I sat down hard. In the silence of my apartment, I heard the faint rhythmic clicking again, that patient fingernail on plastic sound, and I realized it had followed me from device to device, from room to room, from private to public, because it wasn't a sound they made. It was a sound they had taught my body to expect. Back in my apartment, I set the hoodie on the floor like evidence, and the moment the fabric touched the carpet, my phone lit up with a final message. Good walk. Good coverage. Then another line appeared slower, as if they wanted me to taste each word. Next time, you will not need a cafe. We will bring the browser to you. I stared at the onion pin until my eyes hurt, and in the silence, I heard that soft, patient clicking from somewhere behind the walls, like a fingernail tapping plastic on purpose. My phone buzzed one last time that night. Episode 20 is for closure. The next morning I woke up with a stupid, hopeful plan that felt like a prayer. Delete everything, stop looking, starve. The story. I had already wiped drives and burned accounts and watched my own history get cleaned into absence, but the word closure in their message crawled under my ribs like a promise I didn't deserve. I bought a cheap new phone with cash. No biometrics, no saved passwords, and I promised myself I would never open Tor again, never type another onion address, never click another private link to see what's there. I told myself curiosity was the exploit. and I was finally going to patch it. Back at my apartment, I pulled every device I owned into the living room. The laptop that had been factory reset into emptiness, the old tablet that had played the dead drop file, the router I no longer trusted, the smart speaker I'd boxed, and unboxed, like a ritual. I lined them up the way you line up, things you're about to throw away because arranging feels like control. Then I started deleting what I could delete, clearing caches, removing apps, wiping storage, turning off anything that might call home. It should have felt like progress. Instead, it felt like I was cleaning a room while someone stood behind me taking notes. By noon, everything that could be powered off was powered off. Everything that could be unplugged was unplugged. I sat in the quiet and waited for relief. The relief didn't come. A sheet of paper slid under my front door without a sound. I stared at it for a long time before touching it because paper had become the last delivery method that still felt insulting in its simplicity. When I finally picked it up, it wasn't a threat. It was an instruction manual. 1-page black text, no letterhead, with a warped onion watermark faint in the corner. The first line read, "You want to quit." Under it, good. Then, like a customer service checklist, it listed steps. Step 1, delete Tor. Step 2, delete your backups. Step 3, delete your witnesses. My throat tightened on the word witnesses because I realized it didn't mean people I'd told. It meant evidence. It meant my own ability to prove I wasn't imagining this. At the bottom of the page was a single sentence that made my stomach drop. Closure is an agreement between you and us. My new phone buzzed in my pocket, even though I hadn't given the number to anyone. A message appeared from a blank sender. Read the paper out loud. I didn't. I set the paper down and walked to the window, forcing myself to breathe. Outside, the street looked normal, indifferent. I told myself that if I never used Tor again, the dark web would become someone else's nightmare. Then my TV turned on by itself, with no power cable attached. The screen glowed a dull gray, and in the center was the onion icon, warped slightly, like it always was when it was theirs. A loading bar appeared beneath it, crawling forward one calm increment at a time. The speaker voice returned, smooth and patient, as if it had been waiting for me to stop moving. "You can uninstall a program," it said. "You can't uninstall a habit." The loading bar hit 100%. The screen changed to a clean page with a title, in plain font, "Why I Will Never Use Tor Again." Under the title was a video window already live. I felt my stomach drop because the live feed wasn't a hallway or a ceiling corner. It was me sitting in my own living room, filmed from a high angle that made me look smaller than I felt like a specimen on a table. I turned in place searching for the camera, and the live feed followed my movement, as if it were mounted on something that could pan. The chat on the side filled slowly, with short lines, quieter than before, as if the audience understood this was the finale, and they wanted to savor it. "He's ready. He's going to say it." Listen for the voice. A subtitle line appeared beneath the video window, "Say the closure statement." Then below that, the exact sentence they wanted typed like a script cue. "I will never use Tor again." My new phone buzzed. "Say it in your voice. That's the only signature we accept." My mouth went dry. I understood the design instantly. If I said it out loud, they would own the sentence. They would clip it. They would package it as a confession, and a moral, and a warning, and a trophy. And if I refused, they would still make the clip because they had already proved they could use my voice with better fidelity than I could. The speaker voice softened, almost kind. "We're offering you peace," it said. "You stop looking. We stop pushing." The words sounded reasonable, which made them disgusting. I stared at the sentence on the screen and felt my body leaning toward obedience, in the same old way, the way you lean away from a flame, even when you know it's behind glass. I tried to be clever. I tried to be silent. I stood up and walked into my kitchen, out of frame, as if leaving the stage would end the show. The video window switched cameras instantly to a new angle, catching me by the sink face, pale hands shaking. The chat reacted with satisfaction, like they'd predicted the move. The speaker voice chuckled softly. "You still think location is a defense," it said. My phone buzzed. "Say it." I walked into the bathroom and closed the door. The bathroom light turned off by itself. In the mirror, my reflection was barely visible, and then the mirror brightened with a new strip of black tape in the corner, placed so neatly it looked like it had always been there. 2 words in thin white ink. Say it. My throat closed. I stepped back into the living room and stared at the devices I'd lined up to delete. They looked pathetic. Plastic and glass, silent, pretending they were the whole problem. The sentence on the TV remained waiting. I will never use Tor again. The chat slowed, as if the room was holding its breath. The voice returned calm and firm now, like someone closing a sale. You don't have to mean it, it said. You just have to say it. That line made something inside me snap, not into bravery, but into disgust. I picked up the old tablet and slammed it into the floor. The screen shattered with a clean crack. I grabbed the router and ripped it apart. Plastic, popping like bone. I tore the smart speaker out of its box and smashed it against the wall until it fell silent. The violence felt childish and useless, but it was mine. The TV kept glowing. The onion icon pulsed once in the corner, like a heartbeat. The sentence stayed on screen unbothered. Then my new phone buzzed again with a message that landed like a verdict. Nice. Destruction looks good on you. The live feed on the TV updated, showing me in a wider shot with broken plastic at my feet, arms rigid, breathing fast. Beneath the video window, a new caption appeared. Subject, tries to quit. And beneath that, the most honest line they had ever sent me. Quitting is also content. The speaker voice spoke one last time, soft as a lullaby. We don't need you to use Tor, it said. Tor was just the excuse you gave yourself. The screen changed, and for a moment, it showed the familiar grid of my life. Couch, hallway, library, aisle, park, sign, mailroom. Then it zoomed out until the grid became a single image. An onion, layered, translucent, each ring made of my photos, my reactions, my movements. A sentence appeared over the onion in plain text. The router is you. My stomach dropped. The lights in my apartment flickered once that clean edited blink, and when they steadied, the TV was off. The devices at my feet were broken, and the room was quiet again, like nothing had happened. On my coffee table sat one last sheet of paper that hadn't been there a moment ago. In the center, printed in clean font, was the sentence they wanted already written, as if I had signed it. I will never use Tor again. Under it was the warped onion watermark, and beneath the watermark, a smaller line. Thank you for your statement. I stood in the dark holding that page and listened to the building settle, waiting for my heart to slow. It didn't. The clicking started again, closer than ever, not from speakers or vents, but from inside my own throat, a tiny dry tap each time I swallowed. Then the final notification appeared on the blank new phone. I hadn't connected to anything. You can delete the browser. You can't delete the root.